Welcome to Fiction Audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, like and subscribing would be greatly appreciated. If you have any recommendations for novels, comment below.
Please join my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/fictionaudiobook.
Chapter 293, The Frozen Legend. In a deserted location, Kurogai appeared, Wade's dual katana still in his grip. Without hesitation, he commanded the ultimate pupil to absorb the rare carbonadium steel forged into the blades. It's still just short of perfection, Kurogai muttered, his brows furrowed. Even after draining the metal from Wade's weapons, the sixth pupil ring remained incomplete. Yet, deep inside, his instincts screamed that only a small fragment of special metal was missing. Filling that final gap would bring the ring to full completion. That leaves me with only one option, the shield of Captain America, he whispered, eyes narrowing. If Rogers has already been recovered from the ice, then his shield is the key. The thought stirred another memory, the cosmic cube. According to what he knew, after Captain America's last battle with the Red Skull, the cube, housing the Space Stone, was lost at sea. By now, it should either be in Captain America's possession or secured by S.H.I.E.L.D. Either way, Kurogai had no intention of letting such a treasure slip through his fingers. Resolved, he left the desolate area and returned to his New York manor. Rogue, he said firmly upon arrival, I need information. Track down everything on Captain America. His condition, his location, everything. This is critical. Rogue blinked, caught off guard. Captain America. But, wasn't he a World War II hero? He should have died decades ago. Kurogai shook his head. He's not that easy to kill. If S.H.I.E.L.D. found him frozen in ice, then he may already be awake. Focus on S.H.I.E.L.D. operations, start there. I want updates. Though confused, Rogue understood the urgency in his voice. She wasted no time, personally directing her intelligence network to dig into every suspicious S.H.I.E.L.D. movement. 2 days later, her investigation bore fruit. Rogue entered the study and laid a thick report on Kurogai's desk. Recently, S.H.I.E.L.D. conducted a secret operation, she explained. They retrieved something from a massive iceberg. Whatever it was, they treated it with extreme caution and transported it directly to one of their bases here in New York. Cross-referencing their movements with historical records, we found something else. The last battle between Captain America and the Red Skull ended near that same glacier. It's very likely that S.H.I.E.L.D. discovered his body, or perhaps even revived him. Kurogai's eyes gleamed, a sharp smile tugging at his lips. So, S.H.I.E.L.D. found him after all. If Rogers is alive, then his S.H.I.E.L.D., and perhaps even the cube, are within my reach. He rose to his feet, already making preparations. Give me the exact location of their base. Rogue complied, sliding him the details without hesitation. Kurogai gave a final nod. Good. I'll handle the rest. With that, his figure shimmered and vanished from the manor. Moments later, he emerged on a busy New York street, in front of a towering glass skyscraper. On the surface, it looked like a sleek corporate office, bustling with workers in suits. To most, it was nothing more than another financial building in the city. But Kurogai knew better. Behind the facade, this was a covert S.H.I.E.L.D. installation. Now then, where are you, Captain? He murmured. He activated his pupil ability, his eyes glowing pale as he scanned through the building's layers. His vision pierced walls and floors until he located a hidden chamber deep below ground level. The room was decorated to resemble an era long past, filled with objects from the 1940s. At its center stood a hospital bed. And on it, a tall, muscular man sat upright, his body fully awake. Kurogai's lips curled into a thin smile. So, the legend has already opened his eyes. The rate at which I get little to no power stones, LOL skull. Well, if you want to at least read 60 plus to 90 plus chapters in advance. Become a patron to gain access. Chapter 294, Borrowed Identity. On the upper floors of the S.H.I.E.L.D. facility, Kurogai observed Steve Rogers with his pale, glowing eyes. The vision told him everything he needed to know. Captain America had only just awakened, disoriented and struggling to make sense of the modern world. It was exactly like the final moments of Captain America, the first Avenger. Steve had been pulled from the ice, confused and out of place. So, he's just been salvaged, Kurogai muttered, his expression unreadable. That means the S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Tesseract won't be with him right now. The realization lit a spark in his mind. If those items weren't yet in Steve's possession, then forcing S.H.I.E.L.D. to bring them out was the better play. He didn't need to fight Rogers, only control him. His eyes shifted from the Byakugan to the crimson whirl of his Sharingan. Space folded around him as Kamui activated, and he vanished from his vantage point. Inside the ward, Steve Rogers stirred awake, blinking at the unfamiliar ceiling above him. For a moment, his memories were fragmented. He remembered piloting the Valkyrie, fighting the Red Skull, and steering the plane into the ice to save New York. The images bled together until his body jolted upright. This isn't a hospital, Steve murmured, scanning the room. The furniture was close, almost convincing, but something was wrong. His instincts as a soldier screamed deception. Where am I? His voice sharpened as his eyes narrowed. He reached for the nearest chair, gripping its edge like a weapon. His body was coiled, ready to strike. That's a good question, came a calm voice from nowhere. I can give you the answer. Steve froze. Who's there? Show yourself. The air shimmered. A figure materialized before him, a tall man with an otherworldly presence. Steve's chest tightened. That kind of entrance wasn't ordinary. It reminded him of the Red Skull wielding the Tesseract. Who are you? Steve demanded. Hydra. One of Schmidt's men. Kurogai's gaze remained cool. My identity doesn't matter. What matters is yours. I need to borrow it. Before Steve could react, Kurogai's Sharingan flared. The hypnotic pattern flooded Steve's mind. His body stiffened, then slackened, his resistance fading as his eyes glazed over. The same spinning sigil appeared faintly in his pupils. Kurogai smirked. Perfect. Let's begin. With Kamui, he stepped back into the warped space, leaving Steve under his control. Captain. You're awake. A nurse hurried into the room, her eyes wide with relief. She moved to his side, speaking quickly. After the war, we found you frozen. We brought you here, thawed you, and kept you stable. Her act was flawless, but Steve, now driven by Kurogai's will, was not deceived. He studied her intently, then spoke in a firm voice. Stop pretending. You're no nurse. Bring me your superior. I want answers from the one in charge. The woman faltered but quickly recovered. Trained as an agent, she masked her shock and nodded. Understood, Captain. Please wait here. I'll get the director. Moments later, the door opened again. A tall, dark-skinned man in a long coat entered, his single eye fixed on Steve with measured intensity. Captain Rogers, he said gravely. I'm Nicholas Fury, Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. I know this is a lot to process, but I'm here to explain everything. I just ask that you listen calmly. Kurogai, hidden within Steve's mind, had no patience for speeches. He guided Steve's voice, sharp and direct. You say you represent the government, Steve said. If that's true, then where is my shield? And the Tesseract? Where are they now? Fury hesitated. That's not the priority right now. First, we need to. No, Steve cut him off, his tone stern. It is the priority. If you really are who you claim to be, then you'd never covet those items. Prove your honesty. Return my shield. And the cube, it's dangerous. Until I see it with my own eyes, I won't trust you. For all I know, you're Hydra. Fury exhaled slowly, rubbing his temple. Dealing with Steve Rogers was one thing. Dealing with a newly awakened, suspicious Steve Rogers was another. Still, the captain's paranoia wasn't entirely misplaced. Fine, Fury said at last, resigned. If that's what it takes. Your shield is secure, I'll have it brought to you. As for the Tesseract, it's in this base, locked down in the lab. I'll show you both. But once you've seen them, I expect you to sit and listen. Steve's eyes glinted strangely, the Sharingan pattern flashing faintly beneath the surface. A faint smile tugged at Kurogai's lips. It's done, he whispered. Chapter 295, The Cube. Inside the S.H.I.E.L.D. facility, Nick Fury and a group of agents escorted Steve Rogers down to the lower levels of the building. To be honest, Fury was excited to see Steve in person. After all, Captain America wasn't just a soldier, he was a symbol, a legend who'd been immortalized in history. Even Fury, who prided himself on staying composed, couldn't help but feel a surge of respect. Steve Rogers had become more than a man, he was an idea. Fury didn't think too deeply about the situation. Captain America had just been recovered from the ice and reawakened, of course, his mind would still be catching up. Fury assumed Steve's urgency to retrieve his shield and see the cosmic cube was simply a man returning to duty. With several layers of security checks completed, Fury finally led the group into a heavily guarded basement. Bright lights reflected off the sterile walls and countless scientific instruments. It wasn't a typical basement, it was one of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s high-security research wings. Through a thick glass partition, Steve could see an energy cube glowing in ethereal blue atop a complex machine. The light pulsed like a living thing, hinting at the immense power within. It was the cosmic cube, the very object Kurogai had been searching for. Captain, Fury said, stepping beside him. As you can see, the cube is secure. We didn't lie to you. Steve didn't even glance at Fury. His eyes stayed locked on the cube. I've seen it. Where's my shield? At Fury's gesture, one of the agents stepped forward, presenting a slightly scuffed but unmistakable vibranium shield. That's it, Steve said quietly. He took it in both hands, the weight familiar, comforting. But then, without warning, he swung it. Boom. The shield slammed into the glass with incredible force. The reinforced pane trembled but didn't break. The agents flinched back, startled. Captain, what the hell are you doing? Fury barked, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. He had no idea what was happening. Why would Steve attack them? But Fury didn't know that Steve's mind wasn't his own. His body was being controlled by Kurogai, manipulating events from the shadows. Steve ignored Fury's shouts, raised the shield again, and smashed it down with even greater strength. Crack! The reinforced glass shattered, fragments scattering like shards of ice. Steve leapt through the opening, snatched the cosmic cube from its pedestal, and turned to face the others. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed as armed agents rushed into position, aiming their weapons at him. Captain! Fury shouted, desperate. We're not your enemies. We're on the same side. Please, listen, you've been frozen for decades. The war is over. Everything's changed. Give us a chance to explain. He tried to reach the men he knew, the hero of another era, but the figure in front of him wasn't Steve Rogers anymore. Steve might be on your side, came the reply, calm and cold, but I'm not. Fury froze, his expression darkening. What are you talking about? Who are you? The space around Steve began to distort, warping like heat haze. A dark ripple split open beside him, and from it stepped a tall, composed figure, the man responsible for the distortion. Fury's eyes narrowed. You again. The man smiled faintly, his eyes glinting crimson for a brief moment, the Sharingan, a power Fury had learned to fear. Long time no see, Director Fury, Kurogai Alexander Blackwood said smoothly. You've been busy. I didn't expect you to gather so many interesting toys while I was away. Fury clenched his jaw. What the hell are you after? You really think I'll just let you take the cube? Kurogai chuckled softly. Take it. No, Fury. I'm claiming it. You shouldn't be meddling with forces you don't understand. He nodded towards Steve, who obediently handed him the two items, the vibranium shield and the cosmic cube, glowing fiercely in his palm. Kurogai, don't do this. Fury snapped. That cube is dangerous. Even Red Skull couldn't control it, it nearly destroyed everything in World War II. But Kurogai's expression didn't change. Exactly why it's not something you should touch. With a flick of his wrist, the space around him warped again. Both the cube and the shield vanished into the dimensional vortex of Kamui, disappearing from Fury's sight. Consider this a favor, Fury, Kurogai said quietly. You wouldn't survive what's coming. The alarms continued to wail, leaving Fury and his agents staring at the shattered glass and the empty pedestal where the cosmic cube once rested. Vibranium shield and cosmic cube, both had fallen into Kurogai Blackwood's hands. Thanks for the power stones, but it's still not enough for a bonus chapter. Chapter 296, The Sixth Ring Awakens. What exactly do you mean? Nick Fury's brows furrowed at Kurogai's words. Something in his tone suggested a secret far beyond shield's clearance level. Not something we can touch. Fury repeated under his breath. There was only one thing the men could be referring to, the cosmic cube glowing faintly in Kurogai's hand. The vibranium shield was just a weapon, valuable but limited. The cube, however, was something else entirely, a source of infinite power, once used by Red Skull himself during World War II. Fury's instincts told him that whatever Kurogai meant, it wasn't good. Kurogai, Fury said carefully, what are you talking about? The man turned slightly, his crimson Sharingan glinting in the light. I told you already, Kurogai said evenly. There are powers in this universe you can't begin to comprehend, beings who could erase this planet with a thought. They're also looking for this cube. If you want to keep your people alive, don't meddle with it. Don't spread word of what happened here. His calm, almost casual tone carried more threat than anger ever could. Having claimed both the cosmic cube and Captain America's vibranium shield, Kurogai seemed almost pleased with himself. On a good day, he might have spoken more, but now, he had said enough. Fury's jaw tightened. You're saying cosmic beings are hunting for that thing? Tell me who they are. But before he could finish, Kurogai's expression faded into disinterest. He raised his hand, twisting space itself. A dimensional rift shimmered open beside him, and without another word, he stepped through it and vanished. Fury cursed under his breath. Damn it. Then, turning toward the unconscious soldier nearby, he barked, check on the captain. Two agents hurried forward and shook Steve awake. Slowly, the super soldier's eyes fluttered open. What happened? Who was that man? Steve asked, instinctively stepping back, his guard up. His mind was still fogged by the illusion Kurogai had used to control him moments ago. Easy, Captain, Fury said, lifting his hand slightly. I'm Director Nick Fury of S.H.I.E.L.D. You've been out of commission for a while. What happened just now was complicated, but I'll explain everything. So, for the second time, Fury retold the story, the decades that had passed, the fall of HYDRA, the world Steve no longer recognized. He had no choice, the men deserved answers, and Fury needed him stable. Meanwhile, somewhere far from the chaos, Kurogai reappeared inside his secluded manor. The air shimmered as the spacetime portal sealed behind him. Everything went smoothly, I hope. A familiar voice greeted him, Rogue, standing nearby with a trace of worry in her expression. She knew this mission had involved S.H.I.E.L.D., and though she trusted Kurogai's strength, even she felt uneasy challenging an organization backed by an entire nation. Kurogai smiled faintly. There's nothing I can't handle. Prepare a room for me, Rogue. I don't want to be disturbed. It's ready, she said immediately. She had anticipated his return and led him to a quiet chamber deep within the manor, then left him alone. When the door closed, Kurogai exhaled slowly. Mirror dimension. At his command, the room rippled like liquid glass. Reality folded inward, creating a pocket space isolated from the real world. He stepped inside the reflective plane and finally allowed his concentration to sharpen. If he'd only been upgrading his eye technique, he wouldn't have needed the mirror dimension. But this time, the situation was different. Absorbing the space stone's power meant unleashing massive cosmic energy, something he couldn't risk anyone detecting. All right, he murmured. Let's begin, with the sixth pupil ring. The Sharingan flared open, its crimson glow reflecting in the mirrored world around him. Kurogai used Kamui, summoning Captain America's shield from the spatial pocket where he'd stored it. Ultimate Eye, absorbed the vibranium shield. The command echoed through the dimension. Slowly, the shield in his hand began to dissolve, breaking apart into countless streams of red-blue energy before merging with the sixth pupil ring etched within his eyes. A low hum filled the air. The sixth ring, once incomplete, now glowed brightly as energy surged through it. A message resonated in Kurogai's mind. Sixth pupil ring fully charged. Level can now be increased. Proceed. Kurogai's lips curved slightly. Finally. Do it. Warm energy flooded his senses as the ring evolved. The crimson light intensified, spreading across both eyes. The power was intoxicating, unstoppable. Then, a sudden burst of light erupted from his pupils, firing forward in twin crimson beams that tore through the mirrored landscape. The blast pierced straight through the illusion of the manor walls beyond. Kurogai blinked once, smirking. A focused laser from the eyes. So that's the ability this time. He already understood. It was the ocular equivalent of Superman's heat vision, though refined and far more controllable, a concentrated high-energy beam drawn directly from his eyes. As he examined the ability, the transformation continued. A glowing totem, the mark of the ultimate eye, appeared faintly on his forehead. Of the many rings encircling its pattern, 3 pulsed with divine light, the rest remained dormant and dark. Then, the sixth ring ignited, divine fire blooming across its surface, spreading until the entire pattern glowed brilliantly. The design became intricate, alive with movement, and the divine essence expanded until the whole mirror dimension pulsed with its power. Kurogai closed his eyes, letting the energy settle, and when he opened them again, his gaze burned brighter than ever. The sixth pupil ring, complete. Chapter 297, The Sixth Ring of Power. The sixth ring of Kurogai's ring had reached perfection. Because of his previous experiences, this transformation was unusually calm. There was no trace of panic, only a composed awareness as the sixth ring manifested within his ultimate eye. Moments later, the sixth pupil ring stabilized completely. The totem glowing faintly above Kurogai's forehead shimmered with 4 luminous rings, and divine energy radiated from his body, so potent that it nearly pierced through his physical form. To any ordinary person, Kurogai would have seemed like a higher deity descending upon the world. The sheer density of divinity surrounding him was overwhelming. The second ring, the third, the fourth, and now the sixth, Kurogai murmured, his tone thoughtful. Out of 12 rings, I've completed 4. 1/3 of the entire ultimate eye. No wonder the divinity in my body grows thicker with each ascension, it's becoming nearly inseparable from me. He took a long breath. The realization brought satisfaction but not arrogance. Only the 4th ring had been completed years ago in deep space, the rest had taken shape recently. It wasn't luck, it was accumulation, the result of relentless preparation and patience. Kurogai understood that perfectly. He didn't feel inflated or self-satisfied. These powers were earned, not gifted, and that knowledge grounded him. First, I'll get used to this new ability, he muttered, then I'll begin studying the Tesseract. Instead of rushing into experimentation, Kurogai decided to stabilize his current power. His growth had accelerated drastically, too fast, even for him. Taking time to adapt was essential. He focused his gaze, and in an instant, his eyes blazed with scarlet energy. A crimson beam shot forward, tearing through the manor like a blade of light and splitting it cleanly in half. The destructive force echoed through the mirror dimension, leaving devastation in its wake. Crimson beam, Kurogai whispered, examining the trail of devastation left behind. The attack was precise, beautiful, and deadly. He continued refining it, adjusting focus, output, and control, until the once grand reflection of New York was reduced to ruins. Yet, within this mirrored space, none of it mattered. There were no living beings, no civilians to harm, no panic. He could unleash his power without restraint. When the air finally stilled, Kurogai exhaled slowly. Good. The new ability is under control. Now, the Tesseract. He extended his hand, and a swirling distortion appeared beside him, the entrance to his personal dimensional vault. From within, he drew out a glowing cube that pulsed with cerulean light. The Tesseract radiated with cosmic brilliance, leaking pure energy that felt alive, divine even. But it wasn't the cube itself that captured Kurogai's focus. It was what lay within, the space stone. With a firm squeeze, the Tesseract shattered into fragments, revealing a radiant blue gem that floated above his palm. Its light was pure, endless, and incomprehensibly powerful. There it is, he said softly, eyes reflecting its glow. The space stone, one of the infinity stones. A flicker of excitement crossed his usually calm expression. He remembered the overwhelming surge he'd experienced when he had absorbed the power stone before, how his strength had multiplied countless times over. The temptation was undeniable. He could feel it again now, his body yearning instinctively to consume the gem's energy, as if drawn by fate. The power stone gave me strength, he whispered. Then this one will let me master space itself. Though, I can already manipulate space using Kamui, but it's different. Without hesitation, Kurogai pressed the space stone to his chest. The moment it touched him, blinding energy surged through his veins. His entire being trembled as the stone's raw power flooded into him, burning through every fiber of his existence. What incredible power, he gasped, feeling the might of a cosmic force trying to tear him apart from within. His body, reforged countless times through past trials, still strained under the weight of it. Space itself bent and warped around him. Energy waves rippled outward like a storm, engulfing the mirror version of New York in chaos. Had this not been a pocket dimension, the real city would have been obliterated. Kurogai gritted his teeth, enduring the torrent of cosmic energy as it merged with his essence. His aura expanded, and his surroundings quaked violently. The world twisted, folded, and finally, stilled. When it was over, silence fell. The space stone had vanished, absorbed completely into his being. Kurogai opened his eyes, now shimmering with deep cerulean light interwoven with crimson rings. Space itself seemed to bend subtly around him as if acknowledging its new master. He smiled faintly. The power of space is mine. Advanced chapters are available on Patreon. Become patrons to gain access. Chapter 298, The Power of Space. Finally, Kurogai exhaled, his breath steady but heavy. The fusion is complete. Even after countless evolutions and enhancements, the process had pushed his body to its limits. The space stone's power was far more violent than he had anticipated, refined, cosmic, and absolute. His physique, strengthened by the power stone and tempered through relentless trials, had only just managed to endure it. Yet the struggle was worth every second. Raising his hand, Kurogai could feel it, the subtle shift of existence around him. Space itself whispered to his senses. Every ripple, every distortion, every faint vibration of the void was now under his perception. He could see it. He could feel the fabric of space bending with his will. No being could ever approach him unnoticed again. The moment someone entered his range, he would sense it as clearly as breathing. But that wasn't what truly thrilled him. The real reward lay in his newfound control. His very thoughts seemed to anchor the world in place. Especially here, within the mirror dimension, that control became divine, limitless. So this is the power of space, Kurogai murmured, eyes glowing faintly. It feels like I could twist the world itself, even turn it upside down. He extended his hands. Energy from the space stone flared, and reality responded. In an instant, the mirror dimension inverted. The sky fell beneath his feet while the earth floated above, suspended in an impossible reversal. The entire realm had been flipped, heaven and ground exchanging places in perfect defiance of natural law. Kurogai watched the transformation with quiet awe. It's similar to the mirror magic of the Ancient One, he said softly, but this feels different. Where the Ancient One merely reshaped reflections, Kurogai rewrote them. His manipulation wasn't temporary illusion, it was structural alteration. Without his command, the world would never revert. He wasn't bending the rules, he was changing them. Reset. He turned his hands again, and the inverted world smoothly rotated back to normal. The earth returned beneath his feet, the sky above. The mirror dimension stilled, obedient to its new master. A calm, grounded sensation flowed through him. I can return to reality without using mirror magic, he said thoughtfully. The space stone alone is enough. With a flicker of azure energy, space folded around him. The mirror dimension dissolved, and Kurogai stepped out, reappearing inside the grand manor in the real world. The moment he appeared, two figures rushed toward him. Kurogai, you're back. Are you all right? Rogue called, relief washing across her face. Susan Storm stood beside her, her usual composure replaced by quiet concern. I'm fine, Kurogai said with a small, satisfied smile. It's done. The tension in the room eased immediately. Rogue exhaled, placing a hand over her heart, while Susan nodded in approval. They had been waiting for days, aware of how dangerous his mission had been. Seeing him return safely felt like witnessing a miracle. Meanwhile, far across the world, within the sacred halls of Kamartaj, a pulse of emerald light burst forth from one of its hidden chambers. The eye of Agamotto had begun to glow. Inside it, the time stone resonated intensely, reacting to the sudden disappearance of the space stone. The surge of energy shook the chamber, echoing through the temple's wards. Moments later, a golden portal spun open. Two figures stepped through, the Ancient One, robed in white, and Wanda Maximoff, her crimson aura flickering faintly around her. The time stone has reacted again, the Ancient One said gravely, her tone calm but heavy with concern. Just as it did before. Another infinity stone has been disturbed. Her gaze hardened. One incident could have been an accident, but twice. That was intent. Someone, somewhere, was deliberately targeting the stones. Wanda's eyes narrowed. Do you think it's the same force as before? She asked quietly. The Ancient One didn't answer immediately. Her eyes reflected both wisdom and worry. Perhaps. But this time, we must act before the balance breaks. We can't remain inactive. It's time we move first. Her words lingered like a cold wine through the chamber. Something immense was stirring. At the same moment, in the shining halls of Asgard, Odin Allfather sat in solemn silence within his throne room. The air around him shimmered with the faint, red mist of ether particles, the essence of the reality stone, growing unstable once more. Odin's brow furrowed. The ether stirs again, he muttered. That can only mean, another infinity stone has been taken. He rose to his feet, gripping Gungnir tightly. His voice echoed across the hall. This cannot continue. Someone hides in the shadows, hunting the stones. If we remain idle, they'll come for us, and for Asgard itself. His decision was swift. Thor. Come to me at once. His booming voice carried through the Golden Palace. Moments later, ravens scattered from the roof as Odin's command resonated across the realm eternal. No longer would they wait behind their walls. The threat had grown beyond secrecy. If the enemy sought the Infinity Stones, then Asgard would meet them head-on. But before that, Odin knew what must be done. He needed to speak with the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth. Chapter 299, Thanos' Fury. In the depths of space, aboard a massive warship drifting among the stars, a towering purple figure sat upon a throne of black metal. His expression was grim, his presence oppressive. This was Thanos, the overlord of the universe. But at this moment, Thanos' mood was far from calm. A wave of dark energy rippled across the chamber, his sheer power seeping into the air. The scepter of the mind, resting beside him, had once again begun to vibrate and shine with an unnatural light. He understood the meaning instantly. Another infinity stone had been disturbed. Two infinity stones reacting in such a short time, he didn't need to think further. It could only mean one thing, someone else was collecting them. His deep voice thundered across the room. Ebony Maw, come to me. Moments later, a thin, pale figure entered the throne room, bowing low before his master. His calm demeanor couldn't hide the tension behind his words. My lord, you summon me. Thanos leaned forward, resting his chin on one massive fist. Report. What progress have you made on the Infinity Stones? Ebony Maw clasped his hands together respectfully. My king, we have obtained new intelligence. One of the stones has been located. Thanos' eyes glowed faintly. Not enough. I want all of them found. Immediately. Someone else dares to collect what is mine, find them before they do. His voice exploded like a shockwave, the sound alone cracking the stone floor beneath his throne. The sheer force sent tremors through the chamber. His rage was unmistakable. Ebony Maw bowed deeper, cold sweat running down his temples. Yes, my lord. I'll double our efforts at once. Without hesitation, he turned and hurried from the throne room. Outside, he exhaled shakily. The oppressive pressure that filled the chamber had nearly crushed him. But he had no time to rest. Thanos' command left no room for failure. Cull Obsidian. Proxima Midnight. Ebony Maw's voice echoed down the corridor. Prepare yourselves. We have a new mission. Soon, a hulking warrior carrying a massive war axe appeared beside him, followed by a lithe woman armed with a gleaming spear. Both bowed slightly, awaiting orders. What is it this time? Proxima Midnight asked, her sharp eyes narrowing. You look as though the king's temper has burned a hole through you. Ebony Maw didn't waste time. The Mind Stone's signal flared again. Another Infinity Stone has been claimed by someone unknown. The king is furious. We must locate the remaining stones immediately. Cull Obsidian's deep voice rumbled through the hall. The universe is vast. Without a clear lead, we'll be chasing shadows. I already have a lead, Ebony Maw said. The Tesseract, the space stone, was once found on Earth decades ago. If one stone has surfaced there, others may have as well. Proxima Midnight smirked. Then what are we waiting for? Let's bring them all back to the king. Cull Obsidian slammed his weapon down onto the deck, the impact leaving a deep dent in the metal floor. For Thanos, he growled. Ebony Maw nodded. For Thanos. Moments later, a smaller ship separated from the massive dreadnought, its engines igniting in a swirl of blue light. The craft turned toward the distant planet called Earth, slicing through the void of space like a blade. Back on Earth, Kurogai knew nothing of the cosmic storm he had stirred. By absorbing 2 Infinity Stones in succession, he had unknowingly drawn the attention of the Mad Titan himself. Thanos' wrath now rippled through the stars, setting his servants into motion. But for now, Kurogai rested in quiet solitude at his secluded manor. His recent breakthrough had pushed his powers to new heights. He had completed the 6th pupil ring, achieving a level of mastery few could comprehend. The Infinity Stone he'd absorbed pulsed faintly within him, harmonizing with his inner energy. It had been a monumental gain. Instead of rushing forward recklessly, Kurogai chose to pause and reflect, to assess the full extent of his abilities. 6 pupil rings unlocked, he muttered under his breath. 4 perfected. 6 remain, and their conditions are still unclear. His eyes flickered as he sat in silence, deep in thought. The 12 pupil rings, each one a manifestation of a unique ocular power, were the essence of his strength. So far, he had fully mastered 4 of them, the Magic Eye, the Sharingan, the Byakugan, and the pupil of the Phantom Cat. 2 more had been awakened but remained incomplete, the Eye of Geas and the Chrono Eye. The 5th ring, the Chrono Eye, will perfect itself with enough endurance and pressure, Kurogai reasoned. It just needs time. But the 1st ring, the Eye of Geas, he sighed softly, leaning back against his chair. That one's the real problem. He remembered how the Eye of Geas had once saved him during his weakest days. It granted him control when chaos reigned. Yet now, its growth had stalled. Its evolution depended not on combat or energy, but on emotion. And that was exactly what he'd lost over time. As his power grew, his emotions dulled. His calm had become absolute, his heart, unshaken even by danger. The very quality that made him formidable now held him back. A faint smile touched his lips. Too strong for my own good, huh? He stared out the window, the moonlight casting long shadows across the room. Beyond that peaceful light, the universe was already moving against him, Thanos' servants hurtling toward Earth, guided by their master's fury. But Kurogai didn't know that yet. And perhaps, even if he did, it wouldn't change a thing. Advanced chapters are available on Patreon. Become patrons to gain access. Chapter 300, The Street of New York. Maybe. I can cast an illusion on myself, Kurogai murmured thoughtfully, resting his chin against his hand. If I immerse myself deeply enough, maybe it'll stir some kind of emotional response. That might help me evolve the 1st pupil ring. He knew the idea was desperate, and deep down, unrealistic. His mental strength was far too great. Even if he used illusions against himself, his mind was too disciplined to be fooled. The thought faded as quickly as it came. Forget it, he sighed quietly. I'll leave that for later. There are other things that matter more right now, the Phoenix's regeneration and the Infinity Stones. Leaning back, Kurogai exhaled slowly, letting his thoughts drift. The power of the Phoenix had been quietly strengthening within him, its flame regenerating. It didn't require conscious effort or training, the ability was growing on its own, evolving naturally with time. Even the smallest progress each day was proof that the bird's power hadn't yet returned to its peak. That, at least, gave him patience. But the Infinity Stones, that was another matter entirely. So far, he had absorbed 2, the Power Stone and the Space Stone. That left 4 unclaimed. And Kurogai knew exactly where each one was. The Time Stone is still under Kamartaj's protection, he murmured. The Reality Stone remains hidden in Asgard, still bound in its ether form. The Mind Stone, most likely still embedded in Thanos' scepter. And the Soul Stone. He paused, eyes narrowing slightly. The Soul Stone is safe. Its location is still known only to me. He reached into his coat and felt the faint warmth of a map hidden within, a key to its resting place. Without him, no one could ever approach that gem. It was the one Infinity Stone Thanos could never reach. Still, the Soul Stone required sacrifice, the life of someone truly dear. That was the one condition that unsettled him. He didn't yet know what he would do when that moment came, but he trusted himself to find a way. For now, he decided, collecting the other 4 stones isn't possible. My priority should be strengthening the 5th pupil ring and unlocking the rest. That's what matters most. He rose from his seat, running a hand through his hair, his eyes reflecting faint red light. Each pupil ring was a key to greater vision, greater power. 6 had been awakened, 4 perfected. The remaining 6 still awaited their conditions. He needed to discover what triggered each one before another cosmic shift occurred. Still. He frowned slightly. After absorbing another Infinity Stone, I'm certain they've noticed. He could already imagine it. The Sorcerer Supreme at Camartage, the Allfather in Asgard, both had surely sensed the surge of cosmic energy. And then there was Thanos, watching from across the galaxy. If anyone would react the most violently, it would be him. Kurogai smirked faintly. The Ancient One and Odin act out of duty, but Thanos. He acts out of greed. He must be furious right now. And he was right. Even now, Thanos' lieutenants were already on their way to Earth. Well, that settles it, Kurogai said finally, straightening his coat. I'll keep watch on Camartage and Asgard, and at the same time, work on unlocking the remaining pupil rings. Those are the priorities. He stretched lazily, his body humming with quiet power. The Infinity Stones Thanos wanted so badly were already part of him. Even if the Titan collected the rest, they'd be incomplete. Kurogai doubted Thanos would ever wield their full power now. And Thanos without all 6 stones. Not something to fear. His strength, while immense, was still mortal, no greater than Odin's or Thor's at full power. Why should he be concerned? Smiling to himself, Kurogai activated a surge of magic within his body. A ripple of energy formed beside him, a spatial connection linking his consciousness across distances. He didn't need to physically travel to Camartage, there were more efficient ways. He sent a message directly to Wanda Maximoff, his most trusted ally there. She'd inform him of any movement within the sanctuary. That alone would save him the trouble of going in person. Once the link faded, he decided it was time to clear his mind. New York stretched out before him, bright, chaotic, and alive. For all its noise and danger, there was something refreshing about it. For once, he wanted to see the world he was fighting to protect. It had been years since he arrived in this universe. Years spent training, battling, and surviving. But rarely had he ever taken time to actually live. Maybe it's time to change that, he said quietly, a small smile forming on his lips. His thoughts drifted toward 2 familiar faces, Rogue and Susan Storm. Both had been by his side through thick and thin, yet he'd given them little time outside of conflict. Rogue, Susan, he called out with a grin. How about we take a break today? A walk through New York, maybe. The response was instant. Really? I'm in. Rogue's voice came from the hallway, bright and excited. I'll go change, don't move. Susan added from upstairs, already hurrying off. Kurogai chuckled, shaking his head as he heard the 2 rushing to prepare. We're just walking around New York, he muttered under his breath, amused. Not going to a royal banquet. But secretly, he didn't mind. It was rare to see them that eager. They'd both been through so much, it was good for them to feel like normal people again, even for a day. Minutes later, the 2 women returned, dressed elegantly yet casually, each radiating their own charm. Rogue's playful energy contrasted with Susan's graceful composure, and together they seemed to light up the room. For a brief moment, Kurogai was speechless. Their beauty, accentuated by the faintest touch of effort, was disarming. Wow, he muttered before quickly catching himself, making them both laugh. See? Even you can be caught off guard, Susan teased, smiling. Rogue chuckled beside her. Guess we did something right. Kurogai shook his head, a hint of warmth in his voice. You 2 are impossible. He could have teased them back or scolded them playfully, but for once, he didn't. He simply smiled, letting the rare moment of peace sink in. And with that, the 3 of them left the manor, unaware that far beyond the stars, Thanos' army was already moving toward Earth. Chapter 301, 301, Spider-Man. The afternoon sun poured its warmth over New York City, bright but not unbearable. A cool breeze swept through the streets, carrying with it the scent of roasted coffee and urban life. At a small outdoor cafe on the corner, Kurogai sat with Rogue and Susan Storm, 2 stunning women whose presence drew envious glances from nearby pedestrians. After a long stroll through the city, Susan had complained of exhaustion, so they decided to take a break here. I didn't expect New York to feel this peaceful, Kurogai said, his tone relaxed but thoughtful. The streets weren't crowded, just a few pedestrians walking under the golden light. It felt oddly serene, a contrast to the chaos that Kurogai remembered. In his mind, New York had always been a place of constant turmoil, heroes clashing with villains, buildings falling, and sirens wailing in the distance. Susan tilted her head, smiling lightly. Peaceful. It's just a normal afternoon. The world's moved past its wars, and now we're living in the information age. This kind of calm is normal. For ordinary people, sure, Kurogai replied, eyes half-lidded. But for people like us, normal isn't really part of our world anymore. He realized how long it had been since he'd blended in with the crowd, walking the streets like any regular citizen. Ever since he'd gained power beyond human limits, everyday life had slowly drifted away from him. The weight of battles, cosmic forces, and supernatural events had left little space for simple human moments. For the first time in a while, though, he felt almost human again. Then, bang, bang, bang. Gunshots shattered the tranquility. People screamed, scattering in panic. Kurogai's head turned instantly toward the commotion. Down the street, outside a nearby bank, a man in a long coat and dark sunglasses emerged, four mechanical arms sprouting from his back, each gripping bags stuffed with cash. Of course, Kurogai muttered under his breath. So much for peace. Police cruisers had already arrived, forming a perimeter around the bank. Officers crouched behind cars, guns drawn. The men with the robotic limbs seemed agitated but confident. I don't want to hurt anyone, the men shouted. I just need money to continue my research. Before the standoff could escalate, a voice rang out from above. Hey, tentacle guy. Robbing banks isn't exactly the best way to fund a science project. Surrender now, or I'll make calamari out of you. A blur of red and blue flipped through the air, landing effortlessly on a nearby streetlight. The crowd gasped as the figure crouched low, mask glinting in the sun. Spider-Man, Kurogai murmured, recognizing the familiar costume instantly. He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing in amusement. The spider emblem across the hero's chest confirmed it. This was Peter Parker, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, one of the few heroes Kurogai actually respected. That's Spider-Man, Rogue said, turning to Kurogai. He's been showing up all over the city lately, stopping robberies, saving people. He's fast, flexible, uses that web stuff to swing between buildings. Pretty popular among the locals. Kurogai chuckled. Spider-Man, huh? Fitting name. He didn't move. Instead, he watched the scene unfold like a spectator at a show. But his sharp gaze didn't miss the details, the mechanical arms, the voice, the desperation in the man's eyes. Dr. Otto Octavius. Or, as the world would soon know him, Dr. Octopus. So this is where it begins, Kurogai murmured under his breath. Memories of the Marvel timeline flashed through his mind, experiments gone wrong, power struggles, mutations. His fingers tapped lightly on the table as he thought. The radiation that created Spider-Man. Octavius' fusion technology, the Goblin serum, even the symbiote. Each held potential, energies and mutations unlike any other. Perhaps, he mused, one of them could help him unlock the next stage of his power, another ring of his mystic eye. His decision came quickly. Rogue, Susan, he said quietly, rising from his chair. Head back to the manor. There's something I need to handle, asterisk. Rogue looked at him knowingly, her tone soft. I figured. Come back in one piece, okay. She clasped Susan's hand, muttered a brief incantation, and a glowing portal opened beside them. The two women stepped through, vanishing from sight. Now alone, Kurogai turned his attention to the chaos unfolding near the bank. The police were shouting, Spider-Man was trading quips, and Dr. Octopus' metal arms clanged against the asphalt. Kurogai's expression hardened, a faint glow flickering in his eyes. It's been a while since I've stretched my legs, he said to himself. Let's see what New York's heroes are really made of. Advanced chapters are available on Patreon. Become patrons to gain access. Chapter 302, 302, Are You a Hero? The tension outside the New York bank was palpable. Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus faced each other amid flashing police lights and the distant echo of sirens. Neither moved. Spider-Man hesitated, his gaze locked on the hostage tangled in one of the metallic arms. Dr. Octopus, meanwhile, was surrounded, cornered by law enforcement, but still radiated menace. Hey, Squidface, Spider-Man called out, crouching low on a nearby lamppost. Those arms come with a seafood discount or what? You get bit by an octopus or something. Because that would explain a lot. His voice was bright and teasing, but his stance was coiled with tension. As usual, the humor masked his nerves. Enough. Dr. Octopus snapped, his patience gone. You're insufferable. One of his mechanical arms hurled the hostage aside. Spider-Man reacted instantly, firing a web line to catch the falling victim and swing them safely away. By the time he turned back, the villain was already scaling a wall, the metallic limbs propelling him upward with frightening speed. Hey! We're not done talking about your seafood fetish. Spider-Man shouted, slinging another web and shooting after him. Within seconds, both figures clashed in midair, steel meeting silk. Their fight sent shockwaves through the street, windows shattered, debris rained down, and frightened civilians scattered in every direction. The battle of the wall crawler and the mad scientist had officially begun. A few blocks away, at the same cafe as before, Kurogai Alexander Blackwood watched the chaos unfold, sipping calmly from his glass. Everyone else had already fled, leaving overturned chairs and half-spilled drinks. He remained seated, eyes glinting with quiet amusement. So this isn't how it went in the original timeline, he murmured. Guess the butterfly effect is stronger than I thought. From his understanding of how events were supposed to unfold, this confrontation should have happened much later. Yet here it was, New York's famous web-slinger and the notorious Dr. Octopus trading blows under the afternoon sun. Before he could dwell on it further, a sharp voice pierced the air. Look out. Kurogai turned his head just in time to see a massive section of wall, dislodged during the fight, crumbling directly toward him. Spider-Man saw it too. Oh, come on. Not a civilian, he yelled, launching a desperate web line, but Dr. Octopus yanked him back mid-swing. The distraction cost Spider-Man the precious second he needed to reach the men below. Kurogai didn't move. Instead, he smiled faintly. So trouble comes knocking on my door now. There wasn't even a trace of fear in his expression. A crimson glow flickered to life in his eyes, focusing into a single point of energy. Aim laser. A sharp beam of red light shot upward, slicing the falling wall clean in half. The debris exploded midair and crashed harmlessly to both sides, showering the ground with dust and fragments. The sudden burst of light halted the battle. Both Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus froze, turning toward the source. What was that? Spider-Man dropped down, landing in front of Kurogai. That laser, are you one of us? A new hero or something? Dr. Octopus scowled, his mechanical limbs twitching. Another pest, he hissed. Just what I needed, another self-righteous fool in a costume. Kurogai chuckled softly. A hero. He shook his head. That's a first. If anyone who knows me heard you say that, they'd laugh themselves to death. I'm no hero, kid. Spider-Man straightened, wary now. So, villain, then. I'm neither, Kurogai said, amusement in his tone. Let's just say I'm passing through, and right now, I have something I need to take care of. Spider-Man frowned beneath his mask but said nothing. His spider sense prickled, warning him that this calm stranger wasn't someone to take lightly. Before he could ask more, Kurogai vanished from sight. One blink, and he was gone. What the? Dr. Octopus's sensors whirred in confusion. Then, suddenly, Kurogai appeared right above him, descending silently like a shadow. His eyes glowed a pale, icy white. Frost domain. A wave of freezing energy erupted from his body. In less than a heartbeat, the temperature plummeted. Ice crawled up the villain's limbs, locking each mechanical arm mid-motion. Dr. Octopus barely had time to scream before the frost sealed over his body completely, encasing him in crystal-clear ice. Spider-Man landed nearby, staring in stunned disbelief. He froze him solid. In one move. Kurogai exhaled, letting the energy fade from his eyes. Well, that was easy enough. He looked down at the frozen figure of Otto Octavius, then glanced toward Spider-Man. Don't worry, webhead. He'll live. Probably. And with that, he turned and walked away, the sunlight reflecting off the shards of shattered ice behind him. Spider-Man blinked, still processing everything. Okay, note to self, he muttered, never tick off the guy with laser eyes and ice powers. Chapter 303, Document Ock. How is this possible? He took down Doc Ock in a single second, that kind of power is insane. And how did that ice even appear? Spider-Man froze in disbelief, his mask hiding the shock on his face as he stared at the scene before him. He knew better than anyone how difficult Dr. Octopus could be. During their earlier clash, he barely managed to hold his own. Those mechanical arms were too fast, too strong, and built from a near-indestructible alloy. Breaking them was almost impossible. Yet now, the young man who had appeared out of nowhere, Kurogai, had neutralized Octavius in the blink of an eye. One moment, the villain was rampaging through the city, the next, he stood frozen solid inside a glimmering block of ice. The sheer difference in power left Spider-Man speechless. Kurogai didn't spare him a glance. The boy's mind was elsewhere. His goal wasn't to show off or interfere with Spider-Man's battle, it was to capture Dr. Octopus. With a calm motion, Kurogai touched the frozen sculpture and activated the Space Stone's energy. In an instant, both he and the ice-encased villain vanished in a burst of blue light. Wait, what the hell just happened? Where did they go? The octopus guy, he's gone. And that weird dude too. The crowd and Spider-Man scanned the wrecked street, but the two were gone. Far from the chaos, Kurogai reappeared in an abandoned building on the outskirts of New York. Wake up. He flicked his hand, dropping the icy sculpture onto the dusty floor. With a sharp gesture, the frost cracked and dissolved, releasing Dr. Octopus from his frozen prison. The scientist gasped for breath, his limbs trembling. His metal tentacles reacted instantly, stabbing into the ground and pulling him several meters back from Kurogai. Who are you? Octavius demanded, panting heavily. And that power, how could you freeze me like that? Kurogai folded his arms, his expression unreadable. You don't need to know who I am. You're conducting an experiment, aren't you? How's the progress? The doctor's eyes narrowed. What's your angle? Are you here to stop me? Because I'll tell you now, I won't let anyone interfere with my work. The tentacles around him clanged together, ready to strike at the slightest threat. Kurogai smiled faintly. Relax. I'm not here to stop you. In fact, I'm here to help you finish it. Octavius froze, suspicion flickering in his eyes. Help me? You expect me to believe that? Everyone thinks I'm insane, a criminal, why would you want to help me? Kurogai tilted his head. Let's just say your research interests me. I want to see the results for myself. So, I'll provide whatever materials you're missing. You focus on completing the experiment. The doctor hesitated. His rational mind screamed that this stranger couldn't be trusted, but his scientific curiosity overrode his doubt. You're serious? Completely. After a long pause, Octavius exhaled. Fine. If you're lying, you'll regret it. I need. He began listing off the components, alloys, and energy regulators required for his fusion project. As the doctor spoke, Kurogai conjured a glowing sigil in midair, a phonographic spell, capturing every word and detail. When the list was complete, he whispered, Rogue, collect these materials. The sigil pulsed, then shot out of the building in a streak of violet light, heading toward Kurogai's estate, where Rogue was waiting. Moments later, her voice echoed telepathically in his mind. Got it. Give me 3 days. Perfect, Kurogai replied aloud. You'll have everything you need in 3 days, Doctor. I expect results. He raised his hand again, blue energy swirling around his palm as the power of the space stone reactivated. Don't disappoint me. Before Octavius could respond, Kurogai vanished in a shimmer of light, leaving the scientist standing alone amidst the wreckage of the old building. The doctor stared at the space where his mysterious benefactor had stood. 3 days. He muttered. If he's telling the truth, I can finish my work. Maybe this time, no one will stop me. He hurried out, his tentacles carrying him across the city. Whether Kurogai was a friend or a devil in disguise, Octavius didn't care, so long as he could complete his experiment. Meanwhile, back at his manor, Kurogai reappeared in a quiet study lined with arcane tomes and Stark-level tech. He took a seat, his eyes half closed as he focused on the flow of telepathic energy. A familiar voice, Wanda Maximoff's, spoke softly in his mind. Kurogai, there's movement at Camartage. The Ancient One has sensed another Infinity Stone and is preparing to act. Kurogai smirked. So, the Ancient One's making her move. Collecting the remaining stones before anyone else can. Smart, but not unexpected. He leaned back, letting the faint glow of the space stone in his hand cast blue reflections across the room. Unfortunately, he murmured, the rest won't come so easily. He knew exactly where each remaining Infinity Stone was, who held them, and what kind of power he'd have to face to claim them. The Time Stone was safe within Camartage's walls, the Reality Stone hidden across realms, and the Soul Stone's location still shrouded in mystery. Even with all his power, Kurogai understood one thing clearly, nothing about this path would be simple. He chuckled quietly to himself. Still, it wouldn't be fun if it were. Read ahead of everyone Blueheart. Chapter 304, Green Goblin. I want to collect all the remaining stones, Kurogai said with a quiet chuckle inside his manor, the faint light from the space stone reflecting in his eyes. But unfortunately, I can't do it all myself. He turned away from the window, dismissing the latest report from Camartage. He already knew what the Ancient One was planning, and in his mind, it was a fool's errand. Attempting to gather all Infinity Stones was an impossible task, even for her. Still, if she somehow managed to snatch a few and bring them back to Earth, that would save him a lot of trouble in the long run. Let her try. Kurogai had more immediate matters to attend to. It'll take 3 days for Rogue to gather everything Dr. Octavius needs, he murmured. That's enough time to see if anyone connected to Spider-Man might trigger another of my pupil rings. He spoke to himself as he tapped his finger on the desk, a faint shimmer of magic flickering around him. The experiments he was running weren't limited to science, they involved forces far beyond human understanding. Rogue, he called through the telepathic link, his voice echoing softly. I need information on Norman Osborn, Dr. Kurt Connors, William Baker, Max Dillon, and the kid Spider-Man himself. Gather everything you can on them. Each of those names carried weight in New York's underworld of science and chaos, men who had once stood as scientists or engineers before becoming something far worse, the Green Goblin, Lizard, Sandman, and Electro. Of course, Kurogai wasn't sure if any of them would meet the strange criteria his pupil rings required, but he wasn't about to miss a potential opportunity. Even a small chance was better than none. Before long, Rogue appeared at the door, holding a folder filled with data. Kurogai, here's everything you asked for. He took the folder with a nod. Good work. You can handle the rest of your tasks. As Rogue left, Kurogai flipped through the reports, scanning names, photos, and classified details pulled from government and private databases alike. Osborn's been sighted again, he muttered. Always butting heads with Spider-Man. Connors and Baker are still active too. But Max Dillon, Electro, isn't worth the effort right now. His eyes narrowed as he reached the section on Norman Osborn. The Goblin's Serum, a prototype supersoldier formula. Crude, but potent. Decision made, Kurogai stood and activated the space stone once again. A swirl of blue light enveloped him, and within a heartbeat, he was gone. Moments later, he appeared atop the towering Oscorp skyscraper, the city lights stretching out below him. The cool night breeze brushed against his coat as he gazed down at the illuminated floors beneath. This is it, he whispered. Let's see what secrets you're hiding, Norman. He teleported again, silently appearing inside the building's restricted laboratory. Scientists and guards moved in the hallways nearby, but none of them noticed him. The space stone concealed his presence entirely. Inside the lab, shelves of chemical solutions and prototypes gleamed under sterile white lights. His gaze settled on a set of cylindrical glass containers lined with a faint green liquid. This must be it. Kurogai reached out, picking up one of the glass vials. He uncorked it and dipped his finger into the serum, feeling the faint pulse of unstable energy ripple against his skin. No reaction. The ultimate pupil isn't responding, he muttered, disappointment flickering across his face. So it's not this one either. He replaced the vial carefully. If the serum were that simple, he wouldn't have had to cross galaxies in search of real power. Meanwhile, in a sleek office at the top of the building, an alarm began to blare. Norman Osborn, dressed in a tailored suit and reviewing financial projections, froze as a red light flashed across his monitors. What now? He hissed, tapping the console. A security feed appeared, showing a lone young man standing calmly inside his private research lab, surrounded by his classified experiments. Osborn's expression darkened. You dare break into my facility? His voice trembled with barely restrained rage. No matter who you are, you won't leave alive. His pupils flared bright green as he snatched up a small case of Oscorp tech. A metallic glider unfolded from within, and a sinister grin crept across his face. Moments later, he burst through the office door, rocketing toward the lab. When the door slid open, Kurogai was still standing inside, unfazed. Osborn stormed in, fury burning behind his cold smile. Put that down, he barked. That's not something you can even comprehend, boy. You've broken into a private facility and stolen government-grade research. Give me your name, and maybe I'll consider letting you live. Kurogai slowly turned, his calm gaze meeting Osborn's twisted one. Tell me, Norman, he said evenly. Do you know what happens when someone gains enough power that laws no longer apply to them? He paused. They stop mattering. Osborn froze, the flickering green glow in his eyes flaring brighter. How do you know my name? My secret. I know more than you think, Green Goblin. Osborn's face contorted, the unstable serum within his veins reacting to his anger. Who are you? What's your purpose here? Kurogai didn't bother answering. He'd already seen what he needed. And as Osborn's rage boiled over, his body trembling with barely contained madness, Kurogai simply sighed. This might actually be interesting. Chapter 305, Green Goblin's Last Gamble. My identity doesn't matter, Kurogai said coolly, his tone carrying the weight of absolute certainty. Unfortunately, you're not the one I'm looking for, and nothing you possess is of any value to me. Norman Osborn's lips curled into a deranged grin. Really? I don't think your identity matters either, because the identity of a dead man means nothing. With a flick of his wrist, a small, disc-shaped weapon appeared in his hand. The edges shimmered with a green phosphorescent glow as he hurled it at Kurogai. Midair, the device unfolded into a razor-edged blade, spinning at incredible speed. It was a prototype from Oscorp Industries, coated in a neurotoxin so potent that even a scratch would be lethal. But before the blade could touch him, Kurogai's eyes faintly glowed, and the space around the weapon distorted. The disc froze mid-flight, suspended in the air like it had struck an invisible wall, before clattering harmlessly to the floor. Kurogai sighed, looking mildly disappointed. Don't look for death, Norman Osborn. He didn't even move from his spot, only glancing at the green goblin as though observing a bothersome insect. A small-time villain like Osborn didn't even register as a threat. For now, Kurogai wasn't interested in killing him. Osborn might still serve a purpose in the future. But if he insisted on testing his patience, Kurogai wouldn't hesitate to end it. Looking for death? Norman laughed, madness flashing in his eyes. Let's see if you've got what it takes to make me die. The green light in his eyes intensified as his personality fully gave way to the green goblin. His laughter echoed in the sterile lab, a manic symphony of insanity. He knew the earlier weapon had failed, but that only meant he would escalate. He couldn't allow anyone who knew his secret identity to live. From a hidden compartment on his glider belt, he pulled out a small, spherical device glowing an ominous green, the pumpkin bomb. It was the goblin's signature weapon, notorious for its devastating power. Even venom had once been disintegrated by a blast from one of these. Osborn hurled the bomb toward Kurogai, shouting, "Let's see how you handle this." The explosion came a second later, a violent detonation that consumed the entire lab. A blinding flash of green and orange light erupted, melting steel beams and glass panels. The resulting shockwave shattered every screen, data drive, and vial of experimental serum in the room. The lab's once pristine white walls were now charred black. Smoke filled the air. The temperature spiked to unbearable levels, and a burning chemical stench clung to everything. The last of the strengthening potions, Osborn's years of work, was reduced to ash. Standing amidst the destruction, Norman Osborn smirked triumphantly. "I win," he muttered, wiping the soot from his cheek. "Even if you had strange powers like that damn Spider-Man, you're still human. And the dead can't fight back." He turned to leave, satisfied that his secret was safe once more. But before he could take another step, a faint, crimson glow shimmered within the smoke. The air seemed to hum with power. "I didn't nod," a calm voice said from the haze, "so who told you that you won?" Norman froze. His blood ran cold. A thin beam of red light shot out from the smoke, faster than thought, piercing straight through his chest. The energy vaporized flesh and bone on impact, leaving a smoking hole where his heart had been. Osborn's eyes widened in disbelief. His glider fell from his back as his strength left him. "You." He gasped, choking on his own blood. "What are you?" Kurogai stepped forward from the fading smoke, his black coat billowing lightly in the heated air. His expression remained indifferent, his eyes glowing faintly with cosmic light from the space stone embedded within him. "I gave you a chance," he said simply. "You wasted it." Osborn's lips trembled as he tried to speak again, but no sound came. He collapsed to the scorched floor, eyes frozen in disbelief as the life faded from them. Kurogai exhaled slowly, brushing dust from his sleeve. "Wasted enough time," he muttered, glancing at the ruined lab. "Let's clean this up and move on." The destruction didn't concern him. What did concern him was the attention this explosion would attract. He could already sense faint ripples in the mystic energy of the world. The Ancient One must have felt his use of the space stone. That meant others might soon act as well. Staying in one place for too long was a luxury he couldn't afford. He looked up at the ceiling, where cracks in the concrete revealed faint glimpses of the night sky. "Because of that little gem, everyone's getting restless," he murmured. "I can't waste time on distractions." With a thought, Kurogai raised his hand. The air shimmered, and a blue space portal opened beside him, its edges glowing with the brilliance of the cosmos. Without hesitation, he stepped through. The portal closed behind him with a soft hum, leaving the lab in eerie silence. Moments later, alarms blared throughout the Oscorp building. Scientists and security personnel flooded the hallways, shouting orders, searching for survivors, and trying to understand what had just happened. They found Norman Osborn's body among the wreckage, but no trace of his attacker. Panic spread quickly, and within minutes, the building descended into chaos. Far from the burning ruin of Oscorp, Kurogai reappeared in another laboratory, this one darker and more secluded. The faint glow of computer monitors illuminated his face as he surveyed the new environment. "Next target," he said quietly, eyes narrowing. "Let's not waste another second." Milestone. 100 power stones equals 1 bonus chapter. __. Chapter 306, 306, The Scientist's Secret. In a quiet laboratory lined with cracked tiles and dim green light, a man in a white coat worked tirelessly over bubbling beakers. One of his sleeves hung empty, the mark of a lost arm. This was Dr. Kurt Connors, better known to the world as the Lizard, one of Spider-Man's most infamous foes. The silence broke as a faint hum filled the air, followed by a ripple of golden light at the far end of the room. Out of that shimmering aura stepped a man, tall, calm, and impossibly composed. His dark coat fluttered slightly as he emerged, his eyes sharp and unreadable. Connors froze. "Who are you?" he demanded, his hand twitching toward a nearby control panel. The stranger did not answer. The air grew tense, vibrating with unseen power. Realizing this was no ordinary intruder, Connors' instincts kicked in. His skin rippled and hardened, transforming into scales. His body grew massive, his face elongating into a reptilian snout. In seconds, Dr. Kurt Connors had become the lizard once again, the monstrous creature born of his own scientific ambition. But the men before him remained perfectly calm. "Dr. Lizard," the stranger said evenly, his voice low and confident. "I came here to find you." His eyes shifted, the whites darkened, the irises turned blood red, and a complex windmill pattern began to spin. The Mangekyo Sharingan. Before the lizard could even lunge, his body froze in mid-motion. His clawed hand hung in the air, trembling, then went still as a strange symbol appeared within his own eyes. He was trapped, completely under the control of Kurogai. "Now," Kurogai said quietly, his tone commanding but calm, "tell me about your research. What potion did you create?" The lizard's expression softened, his monstrous rage replaced by a blank, obedient stare. "It's a regenerative serum," he replied mechanically. "The base compound is derived from reptilian DNA. It was meant to regrow my arm." Kurogai nodded slightly, his gaze analytical. Of course, Connor's intention had been noble, to cure himself. But science, when touched by desperation, often gives birth to monsters. "Take out the serum," Kurogai ordered. Without hesitation, Connors shuffled toward a reinforced safe in the corner. His claws tapped the keypad with surprising precision. The lock clicked, and he retrieved a row of vials filled with shimmering green liquid. Kurogai took one, studied it briefly, then uncorked the vial. A faint hiss escaped. He poured a single drop onto his palm, waiting for a reaction, but nothing happened. He sighed, his expression unreadable. Useless. For a moment, his eyes glimmered faintly with disappointment, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Then it's time for the next target. Space rippled again. With a twist of dimensional energy, Kurogai vanished from the laboratory, leaving only swirling golden sparks in his wake. For several long minutes, the lab was silent. Then Connors blinked rapidly, his reptilian eyes flickering back to human. He looked around in confusion, breathing heavily. What happened? Who was that? His gaze landed on the open safe, the missing serum vials, and his stomach sank. "Someone was here," he muttered. "Someone saw everything." Panic surged. If his secret was discovered, if Spider-Man or the authorities caught wind of his experiments, it would all be over. Without wasting another second, Connors packed up his files and scattered his research notes. He needed to disappear. He had no idea, of course, that Kurogai cared nothing for his secrets. His mind was fixed only on power, on potential. The next instant, Kurogai reappeared in a dark, graffiti-stained alley. Flickering neon lights reflected off puddles of oil and rainwater. The stench of decay filled the air. "This must be it," he murmured. The underworld's haven. The information he'd gathered pointed him here, a rundown neighborhood where criminals and fugitives melted into the shadows. His next target lived here, Flint Marko, better known as the Sandman. Marko had once been a petty thief, a man who stumbled into tragedy. During a botched prison escape, he had fallen into an experimental particle accelerator, an accident that fused his body with silicon sand, granting him the ability to transform his very form into grains of earth. Now, the Sandman lived as an outlaw, hiding among the city's forgotten. Kurogai walked deeper into the alley. Every step echoed. Every movement drew unwanted eyes. "Hey, pretty boy," sneered a voice from the shadows. "You lost." A group of thugs stepped out, dirty jackets, flicked knives glinting under dim light. Before the leader could finish his taunt, Kurogai's gaze flicked toward them. The Sharingan flashed, and the men froze mid-step. "You're locals," he said calmly. "You know this place. Take me to Flint Marko." The gangsters' expressions went slack as the illusion seized their minds. Without a word, they turned and began walking, leading Kurogai through narrow alleys and broken doors until they reached a small, decrepit building. Kurogai stopped before the door, his expression unreadable. "Sandman," he whispered, his eyes narrowing. "Let's see if you're worth my time." Chapter 307, The Vampire, 1/. Kurogai felt it before he reached the room. Two presences lived inside the building, one unmistakably belonging to William Baker, the man called Sandman, and the other carrying a colder, darker signature that made the hair on the back of his neck lift. Sandman's real name was William Baker, known also by the alias Flint Marko. Spider-Man. No, he should not be here now, Kurogai thought, though the thought barely registered. It did not matter who else might be inside. Kurogai's purpose was simple: find William Baker and test whether the conditions were right to open another pupil ring. Time was a currency he could not waste. He stepped forward without hesitation. The moment his hand reached for the door, the two auras inside flared like tinder in a gust of wind, and the atmosphere snapped. A massive fist of granular sand smashed through the gate and sent a thin figure tumbling into the street. The sound pulled the neighborhood's usual cast of onlookers, kids and low-level thugs, toward the commotion. They stopped dead when they saw the fist. Fear and fascination made them scatter, one by one retreating from the scene. Kurogai watched without surprise. He had learned long ago that most people run from what they do not understand. He remained, taking in details with clinical calm. The Sandman's attack had struck a tall, gaunt figure who rose slowly from the rubble. He was tall but scrawny, all lines and angles, his skin an odd, unhealthy pallor, a shade paler than the average white man. He brushed dust off his shoulders and stood as if the blow had barely touched him. Not a normal man, Kurogai thought. He had seen that presence before in memory and in dossiers, a predator with an appetite for blood. The gauntman fixed Sandman with a look that said there had been a prior arrangement, one now dishonored. "William Baker, are you planning to break our agreement?" he asked coldly, as if demanding an explanation could remake the bargain. The sand-formed arm reshaped, the fist compressing and then relaxing. A stockier, middle-aged man stepped forward from the sand-made mass, anger carved into his face. He spat accusations in a rough voice, calling the pale man a coward, swearing he would not be used for whatever scheme had been hatched in shadow. The gaunt man's smile widened, cruel and certain. "Dare to renege on the agreement," the pale man said, "and you know what your end will look like. Adults do not let this kind of betrayal pass. Not you, not your family, not anyone you love." Sandman answered with a roar. His hand turned to a sledge, and he swung with the kind of force that bent air. The thin man dodged with almost inhuman speed, but the sand exploded against his back and sent him soaring into a brick wall. The impact punched a dark stain of blood into the mortar. The thin man grunted, tasting blood at the corner of his mouth. He had thought himself strong, perhaps stronger than ordinary men, but the Sandman's raw, angry force was different, brutal enough that the aftershocks might take more than a moment to recover from. "This cannot continue," the pale man muttered, eyes sweeping the street for a new source of strength. All around them had cleared. The chaos had driven the usual witnesses away, leaving only those who refused to move, or who had no choice. His gaze found Kurogai across the street, watching with indifferent curiosity. If the pale man could not match Sandman directly, he would find another way, blood to refill his well. He moved as if the air bent around him, closing on Kurogai faster than a normal sprint. Kurogai had not intended to engage, he had come specifically for William Baker, not to be a target. "You must die here," the pale man said, voice low and terrible, "and repent in hell." Sandman struck again. The pale man ducked, then surged straight toward Kurogai, fangs flashing, 4 razor points bared where teeth should have been, aiming for the neck. Lucky, Kurogai thought, almost with detached amusement. A vampire and a Sandman in the same alley. Opportunity presented itself even when he did not seek it. His hand closed on the space gem. The artifact's pull was familiar, its cold, compact promise of infinite distance folded into a tiny, glittering surface. Kurogai called that power, not to tear open portals, but to anchor and restrain. An invisible pressure flowed from his palm, pressing the vampire to the pavement with a force that felt like the weight of the world. The gaunt figure hissed and spat, struggling against the invisible hold. He had not expected Kurogai to move, he had expected only to pluck a passerby and drain him. Kurogai did not gloat. He kept the gem's pressure focused and steady. The vampire could not lift his head, could not twist to bite. He did, however, glare with a ferocity that promised more trouble later. Kurogai's mind catalogued and evaluated as always. Vampires, if that identification was accurate, were dangerous, ancient in appetite and quick to regain momentum. Sandman was unpredictable, a force that could be either brutal adversary or reluctant ally. Their conflict had an unfinished thread Kurogai could not untangle in a glance. He still had a purpose. William Baker's presence was the primary variable. If the Sandman could provide the conditions Kurogai needed to advance another pupil ring, then the rest, vampires, alley fights, frightened punks, were variables he could manage. For now, he kept the space gem's pressure tight and prepared to step in if the struggle between Sandman and the pale man tipped into something that might destroy the one resource he had come for. The vampire's breathing grew ragged under the invisible force. Sandman flexed, turning his sand shoulder toward Kurogai as if sizing the new element in the scene. The fight had paused, a held note in a dangerous chord, and for a long beat Kurogai let himself measure the players. Chapter 308, 308, The Vampire, 2 halves. The street had gone eerily quiet after the chaos. Sandman froze mid-motion, his sandy form half-shifted, staring toward where the tall, thin vampire lay pinned to the pavement as if an invisible hand held him there. Across from him stood Kurogai, his coat fluttering lightly in the wind. The vampire's face reddened as he struggled against the unseen force pressing down on him. What are you? Why can't I move? His voice trembled with fury and disbelief. He could feel the weight of the world crushing him. The air itself had turned solid, pinning him flat. He couldn't twitch, couldn't breathe freely, his limbs might as well have been encased in concrete. Kurogai's power, drawn from the space gem, had folded reality around the creature, locking every molecule of air in place. Under that pressure, movement was impossible. Who I am doesn't matter, Kurogai said softly, his expression unreadable. What matters is that you don't disappoint me. As he spoke, a strange weapon shimmered into existence in his hand, an obsidian-black scythe that pulsed faintly with dark energy. He raised it without hesitation and drove the blade straight through the vampire's chest. The creature screamed, his voice sharp enough to make the air vibrate. Kurogai didn't flinch. His attention was fixed on the weapon, watching as the scythe's metal gleamed red, drawing in the blood that seeped from the wound. A faint smile tugged at his lips. So I was right, he murmured. This really does meet the conditions. The space gem's glow reflected in his eyes, and excitement flickered there. As the scythe drank deep, he felt a surge of feedback from deep within his own power. Inside his eyes, invisible to the world, the seventh pupil ring stirred for the first time, resonating like a bell struck under his skin. That was it, the confirmation he'd been seeking. Vampire blood was the key to unlocking the seventh ring. It was far simpler than he had expected. No need to cross dimensions, no need to seek alien DNA or chase cosmic entities. Vampires existed right here on Earth. If he could find more of them, he could continue his evolution without leaving this world. The realization sent a quiet thrill through him. He didn't notice the incoming attack until it was almost upon him. A massive fist of compressed sand lunged toward his head, its shadow blotting out the light. The blow landed squarely against an invisible barrier, the impact scattering grit in all directions but leaving Kurogai untouched. The Sandman's rough voice followed. What are you? What's your purpose here? Kurogai turned his gaze on him. He could feel the man's panic, the desperate need to protect something beyond himself. No doubt Sandman was thinking of his family. He had heard the vampire's earlier threats, and he feared that Kurogai might be another hunter from the same shadowed world. Relax, Kurogai said lightly. I don't have any plans for you right now. My interest lies with this one. He gestured toward the dying vampire beneath his control. The reassurance did little to ease Sandman's tension. He studied Kurogai carefully, distrust still in his eyes. If that's true, then leave him here. Walk away, and I'll let you go. I refuse, Kurogai said simply. He's far too valuable to me. Sandman's eyes hardened. He couldn't allow the vampire to live after the threat to his loved ones. Then I'll take him by force. He slammed both fists into the ground. The street erupted as a tide of sand surged up around Kurogai, closing in from every direction like a collapsing dune. He had been cautious from the beginning, leaving grains scattered subtly around the stranger's feet, now he meant to bury him. Kurogai's lips curved faintly. Clever, he said, his voice calm even as the sand enclosed him. But you chose the wrong opponent. The space gem pulsed again. Space itself folded inward. The whirling grit froze midair, suspended for a heartbeat, then crashed straight down as if gravity had multiplied 1,000-fold. Sandman screamed as the same invisible force dragged him to the ground, his body compressed under impossible pressure. The pavement cracked beneath him. The air hummed with that terrible stillness. Every grain of sand had been locked in place. You'll stay down, Kurogai said evenly, until I'm finished. Sandman strained against the invisible weight but could not move an inch. His own power, once vast and fluid, now betrayed him, every particle he controlled had become part of the prison that bound him. Kurogai turned his attention back to the vampire. The creature's body was frail now, skin pale and dry. The demon scythe had drained nearly all of his blood, leaving him trembling on the edge of death. Once a predator, now a husk. Kurogai ignored the weakness spreading through the vampire's form. He raised his eyes slightly, and the air around him shimmered. His irises shifted, rings of deep violet unfolding one by one until 7 distinct circles glowed faintly within his gaze. Power rippled outward as the 7th ring responded. Behind him, a spectral figure materialized, ghostly, humanoid, and terrible. It reached forward with long, shadowy fingers, gripping the vampire by the chin. The creature screamed as its tongue was drawn out by some unseen pull. Human path, heart's depth extraction. Kurogai's voice was calm as the ability activated. A pulse of energy flowed through the spectral figure into the vampire, pulling not just life but memories, knowledge, secrets, perhaps even the map of his kind. The vampire's body twitched once, then fell limp, his essence consumed by Kurogai. For a moment, silence reigned. The space gem dimmed. The scythe dissolved. Kurogai exhaled slowly, eyes still glowing faintly with 7 rippling rings. 7th ring, he murmured. Finally. He turned to the immobilized Sandman, who still glared from where he lay trapped against the cracked street. Don't worry, Kurogai said softly. You'll get your turn. Eventually. Chapter 309, 309, The God of Thunder, 1/. The technique of the human path was ruthless in its simplicity, granting insight into another's soul and memories, at the cost of their life. Anyone subjected to it would have their existence snuffed out like a candle in a storm. Kurogai didn't hesitate. The vampire's life meant nothing to him. A pale blue glow rippled from his eyes as the spectral manifestation of the human path hovered behind him, hand extended toward the trembling creature. The vampire screamed, his mind laid bare. Memories poured into Kurogai's consciousness like a river of fractured glass, disjointed but vivid. Ha, blood, vampires. Quinn. What a coincidence, Kurogai muttered, a faint smirk touching his lips as the fragments aligned into a story. The vampire had only recently been turned, cocky, reckless, and still unfamiliar with his newfound strength. Before his transformation, he'd been a petty criminal, running errands for elder vampires who used him for their darker deeds. His latest mission had been simple, meet with the Sandman and secure a deal. But arrogance had replaced caution, and the negotiation turned to violence. Through the vampire's eyes, Kurogai saw the rest, how the vampire's masters had sought the Sandman's unique power to manipulate matter, hoping to exploit it for their own ends. In return, they promised him protection and wealth. But when the Sandman realized their work involved abducting women for blood experiments, he turned on them. That refusal led to tonight's chaos. Kurogai's expression didn't shift. These details meant little to him. What caught his attention was a single name that burned bright among the memories, Quinn. Quinn. Kurogai whispered thoughtfully. So you're the one who turned this fool. He recognized that name from another timeline, one connected to Blade, the Daywalker. If Quinn existed, then the vampire covens were alive and thriving in this universe. That meant numbers, and numbers meant opportunity. A grin crept across Kurogai's face. A vast, organized race, perfect. The blood of vampires, it seems the 7th ring will be easier to awaken than I thought. The vampire beneath his feet gasped one final time before his life flickered out, his body collapsing into dust. Kurogai straightened, the faint glow in his eyes fading as the human path's phantom dissolved into the air. He could feel it now, the pulse of the 7th pupil ring deep within his eyes, quivering as if sensing new potential. Not yet unlocked, but close. A rough voice broke through his thoughts. What the hell are you going to do? The Sandman's voice trembled from where he lay pinned beneath the crushing force of warped space. Every grain of sand in his body was compressed under Kurogai's power. His struggle was useless, his form bound by invisible pressure that even his molecular manipulation couldn't escape. You're wasting your breath, Kurogai said casually, stepping closer. You should worry less about me and more about staying alive. Curiosity can be dangerous. With a faint hum, the air shimmered, and the Sandman's body sank deeper into the cracked asphalt as Kurogai turned away. In the next instant, the space around him folded, and he vanished, teleporting across reality with the precision of the space stone. The shimmering distortion opened again in the quiet halls of a sleek, modern estate, Rogue's Manor. Kurogai, you're smiling, Rogue called from across the room, her southern accent laced with curiosity. She set aside a folder of reports and walked toward him, her white-streaked hair swaying gently. Did you find what you were looking for? Kurogai's grin deepened. Not exactly. But I stumbled onto something interesting. He leaned against the marble counter, arms folded as he recounted the night's events, his encounter with the Sandman, the vampire, and what he had learned. Rogue's eyes widened slightly. Vampires? You're serious? Completely. Your intel division wasn't wrong when they flagged those strange incidents in New York and Louisiana, Kurogai said. They weren't mutants at all. They were feeding grounds. Rogue frowned, recalling several unsolved reports from her network. We thought it was mutant-on-human crime. Guess we were off by a century or two. Exactly, Kurogai said with a faint chuckle. Now we know who's behind it. He reached into his coat, retrieving a small holographic disc that projected the vampire's fragmented memories in the air, faces, layers, sigils, and one name, Quinn. Get your team on this, he said, handing her the disc. Track any mention of these names, symbols, or blood cult activity. Anything that connects to vampire movements in the last 50 years. Rogue took the disc with a nod. I'll get them on it. Kurogai's gaze softened slightly. Good. The young vampire I interrogated was too low-ranking to know much, but he gave me enough. A few minutes later, Rogue returned with a thick digital file. Here. This should help. Kurogai opened it, scanning the data at blinding speed. Every line of text, every image, every location, absorbed, memorized. His pupils flickered with faint glow. Perfect, he murmured. If I can locate their coven, the seventh ring will finally open. Rogue crossed her arms. You're chasing power again, huh? Kurogai looked up, meeting her eyes. Power is the only constant in a world full of gods and monsters, Rogue. I'd rather hold it than be crushed by it. There was a moment of silence between them. Before she could reply, Kurogai's eyes narrowed. A ripple of divine energy brushed across his senses, faint but unmistakable. He turned sharply toward the window, gazing at the night sky. That energy. He whispered. I know that signature. Rogue followed his gaze. What is it? Thor, Kurogai said simply. He's back on Earth. Rogue blinked. Thor. The actual god of thunder. Kurogai nodded slowly, a faint edge of amusement in his tone. His aura is impossible to mistake. The question is, what brings him here this time? The Space Stone, or something else? Read ahead of everyone Blueheart. Chapter 310, The God of Thunder, February 2nd. Thor's sudden arrival on Earth caught Kurogai completely off guard. Still, he couldn't afford to ignore it. The God of Thunder rarely appeared without reason, and if Thor was here again, it likely had something to do with the Infinity Stones. Weighing his priorities, Kurogai decided to put the vampire situation aside for now. The vampires weren't going anywhere, he could deal with them later. But if this involved the stones, any delay could cost him dearly. Without hesitation, Kurogai conjured a shimmering portal of blue energy. In a blink, he stepped through and emerged in a familiar stretch of desert, the very same place where Thor had landed the last time he descended to Earth. The energy signature matched perfectly. Kurogai, my friend. Thor's booming voice broke through the arid stillness. I didn't expect you to be the first to arrive again. Take me to the Sorcerer Supreme. I bring an urgent message from my father, Odin. Kurogai folded his arms, studying Thor with mild amusement. Odin sent you on another errand, he asked, a faint smirk curving his lips. According to the chaos that had erupted in Asgard's magical archives not long ago, Thor should have known something by now. But judging from the Thunder God's earnest expression, he was completely unaware of what had transpired. Interesting. So Odin didn't tell him anything. Kurogai mused silently, his eyes glinting with quiet amusement. The Allfather was keeping secrets, perhaps even protecting him. A rare act of courtesy, one Kurogai didn't intend to betray. Odin might suspect traces of divinity within him, but he didn't know the full truth. That suited Kurogai just fine. Yes, Thor said with conviction. The situation regarding the Infinity Stones has grown worse. My father wants me to contact the Sorcerer Supreme and prepare for what's coming. Kurogai gave a small nod. Then let's not waste time. He drew another arc of blue light with his hand, the space rippling as a new portal opened before them. Come on. I'll take you to Kamartaj. Thor followed without hesitation, lightning crackling faintly in his wake. Moments later, they stepped into the courtyard of Kamartaj, where the air hummed with the quiet, disciplined energy of the mystic arts. The Ancient One was already there, calm and composed, waiting as if she had foreseen their arrival, which, of course, she had. Thor Odinson, she greeted, her tone serene. To what do we owe this visit? Supreme Mage, Thor said respectfully, giving a short bow. I come on my father's orders to discuss the Infinity Stones. You must have sensed their disturbances as well. The Ancient One tilted her head slightly. Indeed. I felt the shifts the moment they occurred. But you must understand, Thor, the title of Sorcerer Supreme now belongs to Wanda Maximoff. I only remain to protect Earth. Thor nodded gravely. Then please tell Wanda this, my father believes someone is collecting the stones. If we sit idle, the consequences could be disastrous. Odin wishes to unite our forces, to find whoever is behind this before they make their move. A faint smile touched the Ancient One's lips. It seems the Allfather and I share the same conclusion. Then perhaps, cooperation is in order. Thor looked visibly relieved. Agreed. Together, we can cover more ground. One side alone would take too long. As they began their discussion, Kurogai quietly stepped aside, choosing not to linger in the hall. With Wanda now acting as the Sorcerer Supreme, there was little that happened here that he didn't already know. Listening to their plan firsthand felt unnecessary. He stood by a window overlooking the monastery's inner courtyard, a faint smile on his face. Plans and alliances, he thought, yet none of them realized the stones are already mine to claim. For now, though, the timing wasn't right. He needed patience. The universe itself was aligning. Moments later, Thor and the Ancient One emerged from the hall, their meeting concluded. Both carried the weight of responsibility on their shoulders. Is the deliberation over? Kurogai asked casually, glancing their way. Thor sighed, nodding. Yes. We've done what we can. But this enemy, whoever they are, they're too mysterious. There's no trace, no lead to follow. All we can do is prepare and hope our efforts will be enough. Kurogai chuckled softly. Preparation is good, but sometimes the best way to find your enemy is to let them come to you. Before Thor could reply, a sudden tremor rippled through the air. The ground vibrated beneath their feet, and an eerie pulse of dark energy rolled across the sky. Both men's heads snapped upward instinctively. Even from within Kamarta's protective wards, they could sense it, several immense, hostile presences descending toward Earth. Thor's eyes narrowed, lightning beginning to crackle in his irises. This energy, it's not of this world. The Ancient One stepped outside, her expression grave. No concealment, no subtlety, she said quietly. Whoever they are, they want us to know they're coming. Kurogai's lips curved into a cold, knowing smile. He didn't need to guess. He could feel their signatures clearly now, dark, oppressive, unmistakable. Ebony Maw and the rest of Thanos' lieutenants had arrived. Chapter 311, The Black Order, 1/. Visitors from beyond the stars, the Ancient One said as she stepped into the courtyard, her expression composed yet serious. Kurogai, Thor, would you care to accompany me to greet them? Under normal circumstances, she wouldn't have bothered. The arrival of extraterrestrial visitors wasn't uncommon, Earth had long ceased to be isolated from the greater universe. But the timing now was delicate. With the recent disturbances surrounding the Infinity Stones, the sudden appearance of multiple powerful cosmic presences could only mean one thing: someone was here for the stones. I'm always curious about off-worlders, Kurogai said lightly, a small grin flickering at the edge of his mouth. Thor adjusted his grip on Mjolnir and nodded. If this concerns the stones, then I'm coming. Father sent me here for a reason. The Ancient One made a precise gesture, tracing golden circles through the air. A shimmering portal opened, and the three of them stepped through, emerging moments later on a vast grassland beneath an open sky. High above them hovered an enormous warship, a circular leviathan of metal and shadow. Its underbelly pulsed with dark light, ominous and oppressive. A ray of energy burst from the ship, striking the ground. Three figures materialized within the beam: Ebony Maw, Proxima Midnight, and Cull Obsidian, known to most as the Black Order. Cull Obsidian's deep, guttural voice rumbled first. Which wretched planet is this? It hardly seems worthy of the Infinity Stones. Let's crush it until it gives us what we want. Massive and imposing, he rested his colossal axe against one shoulder, staring at Earth with the disdain of a conqueror. Don't underestimate any world, Ebony Maw replied smoothly, his thin, serpentine tone cutting through the air. The king himself warned us, overconfidence breeds failure. Cull Obsidian snorted. Caution isn't my style. His grip tightened on his weapon, eager for destruction. Ebony Maw inclined his head slightly. Agreed. The sooner we locate the stones, the sooner we can return to Thanos. He knew well that while Thanos had entrusted him with command, both Proxima and Cull were among the Titans' most trusted warriors. They followed his orders only because Thanos willed it. For now, that was enough. Then let's begin, Ebony Maw said softly, raising one hand as his telekinetic power rippled through the air. Before he could act, however, a surge of golden energy flared in front of them. It shimmered like sunlight refracted through glass, and from within it stepped three figures. The Ancient One stood at the center, calm and unyielding. Thor's presence crackled with faint electricity, his hammer already in hand. Beside them, Kurogai stood silent, his gaze cool and unreadable. Cull Obsidian grinned, baring his teeth. Earth's defenders, I assume. How quaint. Magic, perhaps. Or something else. Enough mockery, the Ancient One said evenly. I am the guardian of Earth, the Ancient One. You stand upon our world uninvited. State your purpose, or I will consider your arrival an invasion. Ebony Maw's eyes gleamed with cunning interest. Guardian of Earth, then you must know much of its secrets. He stepped forward slightly, voice low but sharp. Tell me, human, where are the Infinity Stones hidden on this planet? The Ancient One's expression didn't falter, though a faint sadness flickered behind her eyes. She had hoped, foolishly, that this wouldn't come to violence. So that's your aim, she said quietly. Then it seems this can only end one way. In that instant, the air trembled. Without another word, the two sides moved simultaneously, energy and power clashing with explosive force. Thor swung Mjolnir, lightning splitting the sky. The Ancient One's sigils of golden light spiraled outward, warping space itself. Kurogai remained still for only a moment longer, eyes narrowing. Then he stepped forward, his own energy igniting around him, a fusion of cosmic blue and shadowed crimson, enough to make the air shudder. The Black Order had come to Earth for the stones. They would find only resistance waiting. Read ahead of everyone, Blueheart. Chapter 312, The Black Order, 2/. An icy wasteland stretched endlessly across the horizon, winds howling through jagged glaciers. Two forces faced each other amid the blizzard. On one side stood Thanos' lieutenants, the Black Order, on the other, the defenders of Earth. Among them was Kurogai. The moment Kurogai arrived, he understood what he was seeing. The three figures before them, Ebony Maw, Proxima Midnight, and Cull Obsidian, were unmistakable. They were Thanos' subordinates, envoys of destruction. So Thanos has taken notice of Earth after all, Kurogai thought, eyes narrowing. But he hasn't confirmed the situation himself. If he had, he'd be here personally, not sending his generals. That realization gave Kurogai a sliver of relief. It meant Thanos still knew little of the Infinity Stone's exact locations. Which means, Kurogai murmured to himself, he's guessing. And guesses can be turned to an advantage. There were still things he didn't fully understand, but he intended to find out, directly from Thanos' servants if necessary. Then the fighting erupted. 3 enemies, 3 defenders, an even match, at least on the surface. The Ancient One moved first, her sigils flaring gold as she engaged Ebony Maw, their duel a clash of precision and intellect. Thor, his hammer crackling with lightning, squared off against Cull Obsidian, the brute strength of the warrior meeting divine thunder. That left Proxima Midnight to face Kurogai. Human, Proxima hissed, her voice sharp as her blade. You don't know what you're up against. You'll die without ever understanding true power. Her weapon gleamed, a spear forged for her by Thanos himself, designed to channel her energy and amplify her strength. Confidence radiated from her, though beneath it was a flicker of unease she couldn't explain. Something about the calm man before her set every instinct on edge. True power. Kurogai's voice was soft, almost amused. You're the one who doesn't understand it. He wasn't posturing. To him, her threat was empty, she simply didn't realize the gap between them. Still, this wasn't the place to unleash his full strength. The Ancient One and Thor were too close. So Kurogai decided to move the fight elsewhere. As Proxima lunged forward, her spear slicing through the cold air, Kurogai didn't raise a defense. Instead, he used Kamui, then golden light burst open in front of him. A portal. Before Proxima could react, she fell straight through it, the force of her own attack carrying her beyond the battlefield. An instant later, she crashed into the burning sands of a vast desert. The temperature shift was jarring, the air rippled with heat. Coward, she roared, glaring at the empty sky. If you have any courage, fight me face to face instead of hiding behind tricks. Her words were met with a calm reply. You misunderstand, said a voice behind her. Proxima whirled around. Kurogai stood there, hands behind his back, his expression unreadable. I didn't send you here to run, he said, his tone level and quiet. I brought you here so no one else would see what comes next. For a moment, Proxima said nothing. Then her lips curved into a cold smile. Fine. I don't know what you're planning, but I can tell, you're dangerous. Which means you die first. She leapt, faster than sight, her spear a streak of silver light. She aimed straight for his heart, putting everything she had into a single, decisive strike. There was no hesitation, no restraint, she'd learned long ago that mercy got you killed. The ground split under the pressure of her attack. But Kurogai didn't move. He watched her approach, expression unchanged, a faint trace of admiration flickering in his eyes. Decisive, he thought. If only she'd chosen a different opponent. Just as the tip of her weapon neared his chest, the air rippled. The fabric of space bent and folded around his body. Proxima's spear froze mid-motion. She frowned, confused. She tried to pull it back, nothing. The weapon was suspended, unmoving, as though time itself had turned against her. What? Before she could finish, an invisible force surged outward. Kurogai lifted his arm slightly, and the space around her distorted like glass under pressure. The ground cracked. The next moment, an immense force slammed down upon her, pinning her to the sand. She struggled, teeth gritted, but her strength meant nothing against the crushing gravity of the power binding her. No matter how much she fought, she couldn't move. Proxima Midnight, one of Thanos' elite generals, was utterly defeated. The entire exchange had lasted no more than a few seconds. Kurogai looked down at her, his voice calm, almost regretful. You talked about true power, he said quietly. But you never even recognized it when it stood in front of you. The desert wind howled between them, carrying her weapon's faint hum through the heat. Chapter 313, The Black Order, 3/. In the still darkness of a desert night, Proxima Midnight lay motionless on the sand, her once imposing frame pinned down by an unseen force. The stars above were cold and distant, glinting faintly across the barren expanse. Beside her stood Kurogai, his expression unreadable. Why? Proxima hissed through gritted teeth, struggling in vain against the crushing pressure. What is this power? Why can't I move? Kurogai tilted his head slightly, almost amused. Didn't you come to Earth to find this thing? He raised his hand, and in his palm shimmered the space stone, radiating a cool, dangerous light. Strange, isn't it? To come searching for something you don't even understand. Proxima's eyes widened. The realization hit her like a blade. This power, the space stone. Her voice trembled. You're the one, the figure who stole the Infinity Stones from under Thanos. Kurogai's gaze hardened. Stole, he repeated, his tone low and sharp. No. I simply claimed what was left unguarded. The fear that flickered in Proxima's eyes told him everything. She had heard of the mysterious being who had defied Thanos twice, enraging the Mad Titan enough to accelerate his plans for the stones. But she had never expected the culprit to be human. Could the Earth itself be gathering the stones? Or is this man acting alone? She thought wildly, panic clawing at her chest. Before she could finish that thought, Kurogai's eyes changed, blood-red irises spinning, the pupils reshaping into a swirling windmill pattern. Tsukuyomi. The illusion began. The desert faded away into a void of white and shadow. Proxima felt her will slipping as Kurogai's calm voice filled the empty space. Tell me, he commanded quietly, everything you know. Why are you here? What is Thanos planning with the stones? Under the influence of the illusion, she spoke without resistance. Some time ago, the king's scepter, the Mind Stone, flared with light. Thanos believed someone was gathering the other stones. He sent Ebony Maw to track them, to find whoever dared interfere. Kurogai listened, arms folded. Every word confirmed his suspicions. So, he muttered, it's because I absorbed the space stone's energy. That's what drew their attention. His expression hardened. That means Thanos' gaze is now on Earth. But he won't come yet, not while the Ancient One still guards this realm. For a moment, his eyes drifted toward the distant horizon. Thanos I can handle, he murmured. But the one behind him, Death, that's another story. He clenched his fist. Then I'll have to move faster. With a flick of his hand, blue light engulfed Proxima Midnight. The space stone's energy surged, and in a blink, her body dissolved into particles of light, erased completely from existence. Kurogai said nothing. It had to be done, she knew too much. He opened a shimmering portal beside him and stepped through. The icy tundra beyond was chaos. Thor clashed with Kull Obsidian, each strike of Mjolnir colliding with the dwarf's axe in thunderous bursts. Shockwaves tore through the frozen air, scattering debris and snow. Thor grinned through the storm. You're strong, for someone who's ugly. Kull Obsidian bellowed a laugh. And you're loud, for a god. Their weapons crashed again, the sound echoing like rolling thunder. Not far away, Ebony Maw was locked in a desperate battle with the Ancient One. His telekinetic control and psychic power twisted the battlefield around him, but against the calm, golden radiance of the Sorcerer Supreme, he was hopelessly outmatched. She moved effortlessly, bending reality with each gesture, forcing him back with a single motion. Kurogai stepped onto the field, the air around him rippling slightly as the portal closed behind him. The moment the enemies noticed his presence, both Ebony Maw and Kull Obsidian froze. They looked around, but Proxima was gone. Only Kurogai remained. Their expressions shifted from confusion to dread. Where's Proxima? Ebony Maw rasped. Kurogai said nothing, only met his gaze in silence. That silence was answer enough. Fear made their attacks reckless. They lunged forward, desperate, but it only hastened their end. Thor's hammer struck like a meteor, and the Ancient One's sigils glowed bright gold. Within moments, both foes lay defeated, one crushed, the other swallowed by a portal of light. Become a patron to get access to chapters in advance. p@trian.com/zphyr_. Change it to A, Chapter 314, 314, The Black Order, 4/4. Above the frozen expanse of the Arctic tundra, threads of radiant energy shimmered in the air, whips of light conjured by the Ancient One herself. They lashed and bound two figures, Ebony Maw and Kull Obsidian, who both struggled against the glowing restraints. The air pulsed with mystic energy, humming like a living thing. Speak, the Ancient One commanded, her voice steady but sharp as the edge of a blade. Tell me where you came from, intruders. You know the consequences if you refuse. Bound and kneeling, the tall dwarf glared defiantly despite his restraints. Our king is Thanos, the overlord of the universe, he spat. You'd best choose your next actions carefully, sorcerer. If you defy him, Earth will suffer his wrath. His voice carried no fear, only pride. Even in defeat, he stood behind his king's shadow, a servant of a being who had conquered countless worlds. His faith in Thanos' power was unshakable. The Ancient One frowned. Thanos, she murmured, her mind racing. So he's turned his gaze toward Earth, for the stones, no doubt. Her golden aura flickered faintly as she considered the implications. She had long known the danger of the Infinity Stones, artifacts so powerful that even cosmic tyrants would slaughter worlds to obtain them. If Thanos truly sought them, his arrival would plunge the planet into chaos. Though she feared no single being, the thought of Earth becoming a battlefield for cosmic war chilled her heart. The innocents would not survive such a storm. From behind, Thor stepped forward, his expression hard. "I've heard that name," he said grimly. "Thanos of Titan, a conqueror feared even in Asgard. A destroyer of worlds." "Humph," Obsidian sneered. "Then you know well that opposing him is suicide. Your king, your gods, none of them compare to Lord Thanos. You'd best remember that." "Silence, fool," Ebony Maw hissed, shooting him a glare. "Threatening them gains us nothing." He turned back to the Ancient One and her companions, his voice smooth and cold. "Killing us will serve no purpose. We came to Earth only in search of something, a relic not of your world, but of the cosmos. Surely, there is no need for conflict." His tone was measured, rational, manipulative. He sought survival through words rather than power, appealing to logic where strength had failed him. In truth, he didn't care for peace, only the preservation of his own life until Thanos' plan came to fruition. At that moment, Kurogai, standing beside the Ancient One, stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Ebony Maw. His eyes gleamed faintly, betraying a dangerous calm. "Tell me," Kurogai said evenly, "what does Thanos plan to do once he gathers all 6 stones? Does he intend to destroy half of all life? Balance the universe by massacre?" Ebony Maw's face tensed, his composure cracking for the first time. The Ancient One's expression hardened as realization dawned. Until that moment, she had entertained the possibility of releasing them, of letting them flee back into the void. But now she understood, Thanos sought not conquest, but annihilation. If he obtained the stones, the universe itself would bleed. "Kurogai is right," she said softly. "There's no mercy to be found in that kind of ambition." Kurogai nodded slightly. "Hesitation, Master, is a luxury we can't afford." Ebony Maw's eyes widened as pale blue fire ignited around Kurogai's body. The flames surged, coalescing into the towering form of a phoenix-like giant, its wings spanning across the frozen horizon. The heat of its presence melted the snow beneath their feet, steam hissing into the frigid air. "You cannot." Ebony Maw began, but his voice drowned in the roar of the flames. Twin blades of living fire materialized in Kurogai's hands. In a single, decisive motion, he swung both downward. The ice walls that Ebony Maw had hastily conjured shattered instantly, their fragments turning to vapor before they even struck the ground. A blinding flash followed, and when the light faded, both Ebony Maw and Cull Obsidian lay motionless, their bodies consumed by blue fire until nothing remained. Silence fell across the tundra. The only sound was the soft whisper of wind sweeping over the scorched ice. Kurogai exhaled, the flames dissipating from his form. He turned toward the Ancient One, his tone calm and resolute. "Master, mercy has its place, but not with monsters who serve the Titan. Sometimes, kindness only breeds greater ruin." The Ancient One regarded him quietly for a moment. Then, with a slow nod, she let her golden whips fade into motes of light. "You've chosen decisively," she said. "Perhaps, more decisively than I would have." Kurogai's lips curved faintly in grim understanding. "Then I made the right choice." A shiver ran through the icy landscape as the consequences of their victory settled. The air itself seemed heavier, pregnant with the knowledge that this was only the beginning. The shadow of Thanos loomed ever larger, and soon, the horizon of Earth would tremble under his approach. But soon, his gaze would turn toward Earth. Chapter 315, The Mad Titan. Silence fell over the battlefield. Only the whisper of wind and the hiss of evaporating snow remained. "Now that Thanos' men are dead, won't Thanos be angrier?" Thor asked, concern plain on his face. The logic was simple, and the consequence obvious: killing agents of a warlord like Thanos could provoke vengeance. Kurogai regarded Thor without shift. "If we spare these invaders, Thanos will see only hesitation. He will consider Earth weak. A show of mercy can read as weakness to a conqueror like him. Killing 2 of his lieutenants is a message, not a provocation without reason." He did not waver, to him the arithmetic was clear, the calculus of deterrence. The Ancient One considered the point, weighing greater good against immediate danger. If Thanos truly wants the stones, we are inevitably at odds. Diminishing his capacity, even by sacrificing enemy lives, can be tactical. You are right to be decisive when the alternative is to invite greater slaughter. Thor nodded slowly. "I will take word of this back to Asgard, to Odin. If Thanos moves on Earth, Asgard may be next. I will report, then return to fight." He prepared to leave, the urgency in his movements saying he would not stay idle while forces gathered. "I will make preparations here," the Ancient One said, thinking already of wards, refuges, and what protections to arrange for those who could not defend themselves. She did not relish the prospect, but she understood the necessity. Kurogai listened, then bowed slightly in acknowledgement. I have other matters to settle in the city, he said, meaning New York, where threads of other dangers and opportunities waited. He had committed to contesting the stones with calculation, not theatrics. While they departed to their separate tasks, beyond the frozen sky and far across space a vast warship drifted, escort vessels in formation like a swarm. This was Thanos' command carrier, a fortress in the void. On its black throne the Mad Titan sat, and to him strode Supergiant, one of his psychic lieutenants who consumed minds in search of intelligence. She bowed to him with practiced deference as she brought lethal tidings. Lord, Supergiant said, Ebony Maw and others have been neutralized. Their life signs are gone. She kept her head low, careful to mask any tremor that might be read as fear. Thanos' hand clenched on the arm of his throne. He crushed metal under his palm in a silent, controlled fury. Explain, he demanded. How did they fall? According to ship logs, they arrived on the planet half an hour prior. Whatever confronted them was strong and swift. It appears there are powerful defenders on that world. Supergiant's voice was clinical, because facts were the instruments by which her master would shape retaliation. Thanos' expression, carved as always in stone, shifted into a grin of cold intent. The loss of 3 of his agents in such a short time told him everything he needed to know. Earth harbored force enough to strike a blow against his delegation. That fact both angered and intrigued him. Far from deterring him, it stoked his appetite for retribution. Prepare to investigate this world closely, he said, voice low and final. Find the strength that dared touch my agents. When I know the truth, we will decide how the army moves. The plan for how and when to strike had already begun to sharpen. Far across the battle-scarred ice, a plan formed among the defenders as well. If the stones were now a magnet for cosmic predators, Kurogai and his uneasy allies would need every edge they could gather. The wind whispered through the barren landscape, carrying the scent of scorched snow and the promise of coming conflict. Every movement, every choice from this point onward would ripple outward, shaping the fate of Earth and perhaps the universe itself. In the sky above, faint streaks of aurora shimmered, as if the world itself was watching, waiting, bracing for the inevitable storm that loomed on the horizon. Milestone. 100 power stones equals 1 bonus chapter. __. Chapter 316, 316, The Vampires, 1/. Inside the quiet halls of the New York Manor, Kurogai stepped through a shimmering golden portal. The air rippled behind him before sealing shut with a soft hum. His expression was calm, almost unreadable. Kurogai, is there a situation? The voice came from Rogue, who hurried toward him. Concern marked her face, though she hadn't been at the battle, her powers had recently absorbed traces of perception from another mutant. Through that faint connection, she'd sensed his earlier confrontation, and it had unsettled her. Kurogai smiled faintly. It's nothing serious, he said, his tone reassuring. Just a few pests. Hardly worth the worry. Rogue let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. His calmness always had that effect. Around him, even chaos seemed manageable. If you say so, she murmured, her shoulders relaxing. After a few brief words with Rogue, Kurogai didn't linger. He turned and exited the manor gates, the night air cool against his skin. His focus was already elsewhere. The matter of the pupil ring, an artifact of immense and mysterious power, still demanded his attention. And to track it, he'd need to find the vampires that had surfaced in the city. Far across town, hidden in the depths of New York's underbelly, stood a small, dimly lit bar. From the outside, it looked unremarkable, the kind of place you'd pass without a second glance. But inside, the atmosphere pulsed with dark energy. Flashing lights. Bass-heavy music. Bodies moving to the rhythm of the night. Yet beneath the illusion of life and laughter, there was hunger. Some of the dancers had faint red glows flickering in their eyes, their gazes predatory as they scanned the crowd. To them, the humans swaying to the music weren't people. They were prey. Blood. Sustenance. The night's feast waiting to happen. This bar wasn't just a place to party. It was a feeding ground, a hunting arena carefully disguised as nightlife. At the bar counter sat a tall, broad-shouldered man whose presence commanded the room. His features were sharp, his expression both calm and cruel. He was Quinn, the vampire lord of this territory. His kind ruled the night in silence, taking what they wanted while the world above slept in ignorance. A man in a dark suit and sunglasses approached him, bowing slightly. Lord Quinn, he said with a hint of tension in his voice. Clee, the one sent to handle the deal with the Sandman crew, hasn't reported back. It's been over a day. I think something's happened. Quinn's crimson eyes flickered dangerously. Humph, useless, he growled. I thought turning him into one of us would make him valuable. Instead, he disappears the moment he's given power. A faint red light burned in his pupils as he leaned back. Send some of the elders to deal with the Sandman. If he can't explain what happened, then the ones behind him will. The man in sunglasses bowed again. Understood. As Quinn spoke, the heavy doors of the bar opened, light from the street spilling inside. The sudden brightness made several vampires hiss and turn their heads. A lone figure stepped in. Tall, lean, composed, his movements almost too smooth for a mortal. Beneath his dark coat, strands of hair framed a pair of heterochromatic eyes, one a calm amethyst, the other faintly glowing gold. Kurogai Blackwood had arrived. Conversation and music faltered for a heartbeat as heads turned toward him. The tension in the room thickened. To the vampires, this was unexpected. Strangers rarely entered their den uninvited. The scent of human blood, warm and alive, stirred their instincts. Prey. That was what they saw. Emil walking straight into the lion's den. Quinn's lip curved in amusement. He leaned back against the counter, studying the newcomer. Well, well, he murmured. A bold one tonight. To the vampires, caution was a survival instinct. They fed quietly, never drawing attention from hunters, sorcerers, or heroes who prowled the city's darker corners. So when someone waltzed straight through their door, curiosity and hunger quickly blended into one dangerous impulse. Quinn gestured toward the men beside him. Go see what he wants, he said smoothly. If you handle it well, I'll see to it you're reborn as one of the noble bloodline. The man in sunglasses stiffened with excitement. Why yes, Lord Quinn, he stammered, before hurrying off. He was a half-blood, still human, someone desperate to earn immortality by serving the creatures he admired. As the men moved away, Quinn's crimson eyes never left Kurogai. He could tell, even from this distance, that there was something unusual about the stranger. His aura was wrong. Not quite human. Not vampire either. It was powerful, restrained, but ancient in its weight. And then Kurogai reached the counter. What'll it be, stranger? Quinn asked, his tone light but mocking. We've got every kind of drink imaginable. Pick your poison. Kurogai smiled faintly, resting one hand on the counter. My tastes are different, he replied. I doubt you have what I'm looking for. Oh. Quinn tilted his head, pretending amusement. Try me. Kurogai's eyes gleamed faintly beneath the dim lights. I'm looking for a drink made from vampire blood, he said softly. Do you serve that here? The words hung in the air like a blade. Every dancer froze. The laughter, the music, even the hum of conversation died instantly. Dozens of red eyes turned toward him at once, glowing like embers in the dark. They all knew what his words meant. He wasn't here for a drink. He was here to provoke. To challenge their domain. Behind the counter, Quinn bared a sharp smile, his crimson eyes flashing with menace. We don't serve that kind of drink, he said, his voice thick with mockery. But I could make you something far better, a fine wine brewed from your blood. Kurogai's lips curved slightly. That's unlikely, he said evenly. It's much easier to make wine from vampire blood, after all. You've got plenty of it here. For a split second, the room held its breath. Then, the music stuttered, and a low, almost imperceptible growl spread across the bar. The vampires tensed, claws flexing, fangs glinting under the dim lights. Every instinct screamed at them that this man was no ordinary hunter. Kurogai's gaze swept across the room slowly, deliberately. I didn't come to drink. I came to collect, he said, voice calm, cold, and deadly. A ripple of murmurs and whispers ran through the bar, but none dared speak aloud. The hunter had arrived, and the hunt was about to begin. Chapter 317, The Vampires, Two Halves. A low growl rippled through the crowd. Fangs gleamed in the shadows. The challenge had been accepted. Quinn's smirk widened. You've got a sharp tongue, boy. Let's see if it still works when you're screaming. As if on command, the vampires on the dance floor moved as one. Their eyes glowed red, and in a single coordinated rush, they lunged. Claws tore through the air, hunger burning in their expressions. Quinn stepped aside, watching with a cruel smile. He wanted to enjoy the spectacle, to see this arrogant stranger ripped apart, drained dry before his eyes. But Kurogai didn't move in fear. He watched their approach calmly, almost disappointed. It's really quite frightening, he said softly. But only for ordinary people. In a shimmer of scarlet light, a blood-red scythe materialized in his hand, the demon scythe, its edge humming with hunger. He gripped it effortlessly, stepping forward into the wave of predators. The first vampire leapt, hissing, "Be my blood meal, human, or drown in." The creature never finished. The scythe flashed once. Its head flew from its shoulders, the body collapsing midair before it even hit the floor. The weapon pulsed faintly, absorbing the creature's blood in a dark glow. Within seconds, the corpse began to burn, flesh disintegrating until only a skeleton remained, which then crumbled into gray ash. The bar fell silent for a moment. Then, chaos. Kurogai moved through them like a storm. Each sweep of his scythe left behind a phantom arc of red light. Bodies dissolved into cinders as the weapon drank deeply, its blade thrumming with the essence it devoured. Every strike was clean, controlled, terrifyingly efficient. Blood splattered across the floor, only to vanish as the scythe absorbed it. The vampires became frenzied, driven mad by the scent of death. They lunged faster, snarling, but none could get close. The air around Kurogai seemed to distort slightly, as if reality itself bent away from him. To an observer, he might have looked like a dancer, each motion seamless, each strike deliberate. But his dance was one of death, his partner the demon scythe, and the music the screams of the damned. As he fought, Kurogai could feel a familiar stirring in the depths of his power. The ultimate eye, sealed within him, pulsed faintly with energy, and a voice echoed in his mind. The conditions for unlocking the seventh pupil ring have been met. Do you wish to activate it? Yes, Kurogai answered without hesitation. The moment the words left him, heat surged through his body. A current of power gathered beneath his skin, flowing upward through his optic nerves until it reached his eyes. The sensation was neither pain nor pleasure, it was transformation. He opened his eyes wide. Instantly, the world shifted. His once amethyst gold pupils darkened to an endless black, swirling like a bottomless vortex. The air in front of him shimmered and bent, ripples of distortion spreading outward. The scythe in his hand vibrated as if resonating with the new energy flooding his body. Seventh pupil ring, twisted eye. Kurogai's gaze sharpened. He could feel the power's nature, not an element, but a concept itself. Distortion. A force that could bend anything it touched. Light. Sound. Matter. Even gravity and energy itself. He clenched his fist, testing it. The space around his hand rippled, warping faintly like heat waves over desert sand. One of the vampires screamed and charged, claws aimed at Kurogai's throat, but halfway through the leap, its body twisted violently in midair, snapping in directions that defied physics. It hit the ground in a broken heap, bones shattered by the invisible distortion. Impressive, Kurogai murmured, his voice calm. A conceptual ability, distortion on every level. He turned his head slightly, studying the subtle shifts in the air, the faint hum of vibrating energy. Light bends. Sound muffles. Even force loses shape, he whispered. Yes. This is power worth having. For the first time since the fight began, Quinn's smirk faltered. What the hell are you, he growled, eyes narrowing. You're no ordinary human. Kurogai tilted his head. No, he replied. I'm not. With a flick of his wrist, the sight dissolved into red motes, replaced by the swirling darkness of the twisted eye. He looked at Quinn, and reality folded. The walls of the bar rippled, bending inward and outward as if the building itself was unsure of its existence. Tables, chairs, and scattered bottles swirled in midair before shattering into fragments that hovered like suspended stars. The vampires shrieked, clawing at nothing, their senses overwhelmed by the warping of space around them. Quinn stumbled backward, his eyes wide, the predator's confidence draining. Impossible, this can't. Kurogai's voice cut through the chaos, calm and absolute. It's already happening, he said. And it will continue until nothing resists. A tide of dark energy surged from him, and the remaining vampires were swept aside effortlessly, their bodies twisting unnaturally, some evaporating into ash before they even landed. The bar, once a den of hunters, had become a tomb of distorted reality. And through it all, Kurogai moved like a shadow of inevitability, every step purposeful, every motion predatory, his black vortex eyes consuming the world around him. Milestone. 100 power stones equals 1 bonus chapter. I've been getting little to no power stones, don't be greedy with them, sleepy face.